welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. We wanted to give you an audio test with Mark and I on the line, just so you can hear a little bit of how we sound. So you go ahead and talk some.
Check, 1, 2. This is Mark McGahee. Hope you're doing great today. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I hope all our volumes are good for you. Just kind of take a listen, see what you think, and make sure all that's working as you're getting in. We've been playing some nice jam music as everybody's getting into. So far it looks good. Thanks for checking in the chat too. It's good to see all your names and see that you're here and you can hear us, and we're all good. So we'll keep an eye on the chat as our session goes on, and we'll start here just about 30 seconds or so. We want to start right on time for everybody. Okay, well, we're going to dive right in. Welcome, everybody. This is the UIL Area Marching Band Judge Training. My name is Jerry Miller. I'm going to serve as one of your hosts today, along with
Mark McGahee.
We're super excited to be here with you. We had a chance to do this last year virtually, kind of coming out of COVID, and it was a successful way for us to be able to communicate with you and just have those conversations about how things were going, what we needed to be looking for as judges, kind of diving back into the season. So it's my hope today that we can continue to offer you some commentary, some things to think about. The first 2 hours, just to give you kind of a rundown, we have it divided into 3 parts. We're going to start talking just about judging ethics, the overview of the judging process for area, what our expectations are there. After that, we're going to dive into the music sheet for about 35-40 minutes. We're going to move into the visual sheet for 35 or 40 minutes, break down all of the subcaptions, just everything you need to know inside of that. Once we finish that process, we're going to take a little break. Our returning judges are going to join us. We're going to focus on how we manage numbers. We're going to talk about competition suite, and we're going to go back and do one more, hopefully with time, little overview of all the sheets. So that kind of gets you into it. We're going to start, though, with a message from our UIL Executive Secretary, or our Executive Director. Dr. Brad Kent did a great intro for us just to share a little bit with you. And so we're going to go ahead and roll that clip for you here in just a moment. So enjoy this clip from Dr. Kent.
Hello, my name is Brad Kent, and I serve as State Director of Music for the University Interscholastic League. On behalf of the thousands of marching band students across the state of Texas, thank you for your willingness to serve as a UIL area or state marching band contest adjudicator. These events are paramount in the lives of students, directors, parents, and communities across Texas. The success of these competitions is largely dependent upon the quality of adjudication and the consistent application of the UIL area state adjudication system. The information you are about to receive is intended to provide you with the best possible training to in turn enable you to provide the highest quality evaluations for our bands. This adjudication system was conceived by Texas band directors and developed through multiple years of study and testing, and is designed to maintain an emphasis on achievement in the areas of music and visual performance, all while reinforcing the educational priorities that are valued in our state. This training will guide you through a review of the key components of the UIL scoring system, with an emphasis on points management and the development of purposeful evaluations. Instructions will emphasize the effective use of the area state adjudication rubrics, or placemats as we call them, to score and rank the participating bands. In closing, I would like to thank TMAA and specifically Jerry Miller and Mark McGahee for the development of this wonderful tool to aid in providing the best possible adjudication experience for marching bands in Texas. Again, thank you for your service as a UIL judge. We hope that you find this training to be educational, informative, and useful as you prepare to adjudicate the contest.
All right, welcome back. So thank you for that, for Dr. Kent. We appreciate that introduction. With that, we're going to dive a little bit into the marching band workshop and some information you need. I'm going to take this first slide, and I'll kind of let Mr. McGahee bop back and forth as we go back and forth. So first and foremost, when we think about judging our groups at area, we want to ensure that the adjudication is based solely on the performance of the day. We don't want to base it on past reputations of the band program or of that director. It's so important that we are consistent when we're judging area. If you miss one, if you have a call that you just don't feel great about, don't let it impact the rest of your day. You have an opportunity to start again. And one of the exciting developments we're going to be talking about today is the use of Competition Suite. And with that, it really gives you a chance to go back and revisit some of those things. You know, we'd rather have that one mistake, that one group you missed, than feeling like one mistake compounds the day. And we're hoping that the use of Competition Suite at a lot of the contests, but as well, just your overall mindset as we get into talking about this will help you to grow from there. I also want to remind you that when we're judging, just as the performers on the field are on stage for the day, you're also on stage for the day, and there are people who are watching us very closely as judges. So it's important that we're not talking to judges. We finish our sheet, whether it be on a tablet or if we are writing, when we finish that mark that we are done for the day, that we close that with that band, and then we can have conversations with others, and really not about the bands, but that perception can be really important. I'll let Mark take these next few.
Along the same lines as that, on the day of the contest coordinator will actually be reviewing some of those key points again. Not necessarily kind of telling you, hey, here's the exact same range we're going to be in, but they will be talking about areas to say, some contest dynamics. You're going to have maybe a sprinkling of groups that could be some of your top contenders right off the bat, all the way spread through the whole show. So don't be afraid to put a number down, or all of a sudden give yourself some room. Then, of course, don't give yourself such a narrow margin where you have ties and things that are already the part of it. So you just thinking through using the rubric, which we'll be discussing in a bit, you're going to see quite a few ways to keep yourself grounded. Moving ahead, we have 5 divisions that constitute what the level of there are. Always, and then you think through consistently, usually, sometimes, and rarely. Those are really the key words that you can keep yourself really grounded. It's something that keeps you going where the topic that you're thinking about and how it ties into whether the visual idea or the musical idea, those words should be just resonating constantly as you're thinking and seeing this group in front of you. The placemat is, of course, the back of the sheet. We use that term a lot, and hopefully you're becoming more familiar with it and becoming more commonplace. In many cases, I know as a judge, personally, I look at the placemat almost more, and I look at it first before I even get to the first side of it, where it actually has some of the key words along the way. Justifying your score that matches that area. You don't have to all of a sudden have a comment, of course, with the comments to match that same score that you put down, but it should be, yep, I was right there in the middle of this one, and that's what I talked about most of the time. That's where the number needs to lie, and we'll show you how you can massage those numbers to make that even more accurate as the contest plays itself out. If you're judging, you'll be judging with Competition Suite, and so you're going to love to see this. If you haven't used this before, it's a great tool, and it really kind of lays itself out. And I know Jerry will have a lot more details about that towards the end of our training. Speaking to your recording that you're giving, as he mentioned earlier, you're being on the whole time. It's their first time, and even though it could be the 30th group that you've seen, it's still their first time, and you have to say, I'm going to give you the most inspiring, educational, and accurate read that any would be proud to play for any administrator, or if all of a sudden all the students were able to hear it in the parking lot, it should be something that's not only encouraging, but gives them a really good snapshot of who they are on that particular day in their performance.
Well, I know for me, like I like to play the area recordings for the students, or at least make them available. Like I know through Dropbox or Google Drive or things like that. A lot of directors will make those available, and I've always kind of made it my goal as a judge, because maybe I wouldn't make all 5 prelims recordings, but I want to be that one that is available. I want to make the recording where, and we're going to talk about this a lot later, where I'm a fan of that band, where they can tell that I'm excited for what they're doing, where I'm calling out the areas where we have some room for improvement, whether it be advancing prelims to finals, finals onto state, whatever that looks like. They want you to invest. They want you to feel like you're a part of their program for those 15 minutes that you're with them.
Absolutely.
I'll go on to a couple more things here. Make sure, and Mark kind of highlighted this already, that you justify the score by the comments that you're saying. Like, I think it's really important that he was talking about rarely, sometimes, usually, consistently, and always, that I'm saying that. Woodwinds, you consistently do this. Color Guard, this is consistent. And I've given you, in fact, I pinned it at the top of our thing, and it's over in the description of today's video. I gave you some helpful links. One of the helpful links in there is a list of synonyms. And as silly as that might sound, it's just, Jerry, I don't want to say consistently all day. What are some other words I can use for consistently? And I would encourage you to have that list in front of you while you're judging. So if you're like, I feel like I've said the same word, especially If you do have to use the sometimes category, if you do have to get into the bottom usually and you're feeling like, oh, I don't really have a lot of nice words here, it gives you some options, I think, to just give that group some more commentary. Address all the descriptors. I think it's important. Imagine, again, if you have you've worked hard as a band director to have a great percussion section and then the judge never speaks to them. Like, I think that would be a fault that as an adjudicator would bother us. We want to make sure that we absolutely speak to all 5 on the music sheet. We speak to the individual marching on the visual side, the ensemble marching, and what's asked of them. So just being sure that you cover everything evenly. I think it's harder in music because we can get trapped by one thing that's either really good or one thing that's really struggling. Just remember that while that brass section may be struggling that day, there may be a stellar woodwind section that needs credit, that deserves credit.
All students are contributing to the performance, and you're recognizing that, and you're giving them their moment to shine, that your eyes go there, your ears go there, and really help them out. Ringing endorsement with that sheet. I judged area last year, and I did use that synonym sheet a lot. It was great having it there, especially as I got a little bit foggy of thinking about different terms. It was so helpful to kind of get a word that I thought was even more accurate for that group's performance.
Yeah, on the 40th band of the day,
yeah, exactly.
You're going to feel like I've used these words a lot. Lastly, just be mindful of your mobile phone. I mean, I know it could be a big college football weekend. It could be a lot of things, but just be mindful of your mobile phone. When the groups are, I'm really conscious. I'll take it out of my pocket. But when the group starts, like, I'm really conscious to place it face down and kind of off to the side of the table so it's not in the way. And even if I do need to check it, I try and wait until a break. Whether it's checking in with family, if you have babysitter home with the kids, whatever that is, we understand that those things are going to happen. But just be mindful that we don't want the perception that we're texting other judges or that we're texting directors or that anything like that's going on. So just kind of be mindful of your mobile phone conduct.
Yeah, the optics are everything. They're real important.
Let's you and I kind of bop back before between these, but I'll start with this first one, which is there's no official style for marching band in Texas. It's not about a military group can't score at a level that a corps style or couldn't score where a show band could score. Any of those, done in any way. I often think about, like, what if somebody rolled out a show that opened and their opener was all military style and their ballad was corps style and their closer was like a show band thing.
Right.
Still, excellence is excellence. Regardless of the channel that you push that through, like, whichever way you do it is going to be excellent. And maybe I'll have you talk a little bit about just that equal, because you mentioned this already, that equal opportunity for success for all those groups rolling out.
Sure do. Here's a couple of key questions that came to my mind when I was listening to that statement. Does it provide clarity? Is it a style that provides visual clarity for the ensemble? Does it lend either positively or negatively to the musical performance? Like, it's a style where their marching style is so rigid you can hear the feet in the sound, or they can't keep up with the tempo, for instance. And then does it provide a style that all the performers can actually do? It is something where it looks the same, it sounds the same, and of course that's the visual aspect of it. You can have those same questions for the musical part of it too.
Yeah.
But I think it really, as Jerry said, again, to reiterate, there is no official style where you just have to be able to ask the effectiveness of it and the excellence level where all students can perform in a very uniform style.
Yeah. Think about, too, recognize, measure, reward achievements. Let's break that down. I recognize it. I recognize that the trumpets are doing a double tongue passage. I recognize that the rifles are tossing triples across the front. Okay, I recognize. I measured it. How well did that go for the group? Did everybody catch the triple? How was the technique leading into it? Were all the trumpets able to double tongue with good tone quality and at the right volume? And then reward it. When it goes well, you go, wow, that was definitely, let's see my boxes. That's high consistency. Or, man, that was pretty spot on perfect. Or maybe it's over in the usually category. So, you're constantly using this placemat to make little mindful tick marks where you're like, oh, that's there, that's there, that's there. And it's almost as if you made these over the course of every impression of all the musical moments or the visual moments, and then you went back and you said, when I take all these points and put them in a scatter plot, so to speak, where does that end up? And that's where that score should be inside of woodwind, inside of brass percussion, or inside of the marching ones. I also want to be careful about this next statement, because this is one of those where if you see something that is maybe out of the ordinary, you worry could be a rules violation, don't let it impact your adjudication. It's not about your adjudication. If you see something that's outside of the rules, make a note of it, and either after that band or on a break or whenever you can, get to that area executive and let them know, hey, I saw like a parent on the field doing this. Is that something we're allowing? If you have a question like that, please ask. Don't let it impact your adjudication. I wouldn't want you to get to the end of it and the area executive tells you, oh yes, I told them it was today, this person was sick, this thing happened, we've allowed for that, I've already spoken with the state office, and then you're like, oh, well, I was kind of negative about it on the recording. Just let the recording go. You judge the show that's in front of you, but if you see something that you think might be a rules violation, let the area executive handle that with the state office. Don't feel like you need to run the contest. That's not what you've been hired to do that day. A couple more things here. Remember that we're teachers first and judges second. Our role is to be a teacher first and foremost. And I think that if we can ensure that we're teaching and teaching kids to grow, teaching programs, mentoring younger directors, right? Many of us on this are veteran directors. We've been doing this 20 plus years. Think about that third year that we were teaching and took a band to contest. Right. We appreciated that mentorship. We appreciated that person not only stepping in our shoes for those 15 minutes and working with the group and offering commentary, but they were also helping us grow as educators. And that's one of the most important roles you play as an area judge. Remember, too, that everything we write and say should positively enrich these young people. Our primary concern is their welfare and their growth. Okay.
Along the same line with the teachers and the instructors, it doesn't have to be necessarily with age, but let's say it's a program trying to really grow and be more progressive, for instance. And in some ways, it kind of represents the adolescence of their teaching, or maybe their understanding of a certain level of design. And you could be so encouraging in that one, or so deflating in some ways, and not dismissive. But you could say, "I see what you're trying to do there, but what we're asking the students is maybe have a lot more demand than we're asking you to on. But you're on the right track, and there's some really good ways to steer that." Where at the end of that conversation, there could be some thought-provoking questions that as a staff, they could really get a lot out of that, just like what you're trying to do to the students on the day of the performance. We're trying to give everyone, and it's a celebration. As many times as we can show it's a celebration, let's keep bringing that up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's an honor. You've advanced from region to area, and that's an honor, and advancing from area prelims to area finals. The more that we're positively supporting the growth of that program at whatever stage they are, rebuilding, building for the first time they've made area in a decade, whatever that is for us, we want them to walk off that field going, that was a really cool experience. Because we know, while some groups, their goal may be to earn a slot in state finals, for many groups, just getting to area, getting to area, or finishing in the top half of area is a goal for them. And so when they hear us supporting that and rewarding and measuring those successes, I think that's really valuable. Let's do a little bit of judge basics. I know many of you on here are judging area for the first time, but you may have judged other competitions. Even if this is one of the earlier competitions you've judged in your judging career, I want to take you through, from the two of us who have done this more than we care to talk about, a little bit of before, during, and after. What are some things to be mindful of as a judge when you show up at the site? First and foremost, familiarize yourself with the surroundings, right? How are the field conditions? What are things, how close is the audience to you? Make sure your recorder works. In Competition Suite, we're gonna have, and I'll show it to you later, we'll have a file called UIL test, and you'll use your sound test to make sure your microphone works. On a regular handheld, make sure that works. Identify yourself. You can write it down if you're a little anxious about the intro, if you're not. I mean, I think some of us, it's a little bit autopilot, but you can always say, my name's Jerry Miller. I'm judging to the area of music today. We are on Saturday, October the 29th. This is UIL 6A Area Z marching contest. And I always like to say where I am on the, I'm on the 35-yard line, because sometimes you may hear things and they're like, why did Jerry react, but Mark didn't react to that? Or Jerry thought it was too loud, Mark thought it was too soft. What's the deal? Well, often it's because one of us was on a side where maybe the speaker was facing, maybe it was just where the brass bells were that created that. So I like to give you that reference. I think that one's important. You want to do a few of these and add on to that?
And even before that, some things that I think about, and I have a backpack that is my judging backpack, and it's prepared for any type of weather, even though that day seems like it's going to be a sunny day, and then suddenly there's a cold front that comes in. I've got a jacket that's packed in there. Or the morning, the sun is coming over the visitor stands, and then I have a hat in there. I have sunscreen. I have sunglasses that are ready to go. So you're prepared for anything throughout the course of the day, not just the optimum situation where it's 70 degrees and there's no sun in your eyes.
Right.
So you're prepared for it. Just think through that about everything that you're prepared before you walk out the door that day. As you said before, additionally, the approach and tone of the commentary should be mindful. We've been saying that several different times. Judging through time. you could react to a great moment of the show. That should not be when you make your mind up. It could be right off the bat an opening hit, and you can't say, well, there's the winner of the contest. And to the course of time, or how the show is paced out, it maybe had a rough start because there was some kind of electronics issue. Then suddenly it actually started getting a lot more honed in, and then you're judging over the overall encompassing. Like there's an overall theme of this ensemble. Past these a couple little speed bumps that we hit, the overall ensemble was outstanding.
Yeah.
Or visually, there's a timing issue. Maybe they're getting used to how things sounded in the stands. Maybe there's a little bit of a tempo rub. And you know what? They settled in and they did a great job. All of those are so important. So you don't necessarily give too much credit, nor do you all of a sudden say, well, my mind's already made up because you had one mistake. But you are trying to be as observant as possible, because it is a live performance. Many things can happen as we're all trying to evaluate with the give and take of the situation.
Yeah. While we're judging as well, and I think we've kind of covered this a little bit, but remember that the recording is the primary means of communication with those groups. They're going to listen to your recording first, and they're going to not only assume how they did, assume what that score is going to look like, but that's also going to be a reflection on what we offered the program, on our worth and our value there. So just be sure that we're thinking about what that tone is like as we're speaking through that, and that how we say things is as important as what we're actually saying. Like, how are we saying it to them? I would rather you, and we're going to listen to some exemplars in a lot. We're going to listen to some great judges talking. And I think what shocks me the most, and I think you and I have talked about this, will be the amount of silence that you hear.
Right.
The amount of time that they're just taking it in, letting the show come to them, and then kind of coming back out. In fact, I think that I did a good lead-in for us here. While we judge, it's not easy to listen while you're talking.
Right.
Let the show come to you. Don't feel like you have to give a running 7-minute, 8-minute dialogue. It doesn't need to be. Allow that brass moment to happen, then measure, reward, react back to it. During the performance, keep your comments succinct. Right? Try and be quick about it. I often keep, you were talking about your judging bag, like one of the things I always have is a little notepad, and I'll just write a single word like articulation or intonation. And then at the end of that file, I'll go back and say, hey guys, I wanted to talk a little bit about what we were doing here with intonation, what we were doing with that. I think that can be helpful. Remember, too, that you don't have that long until the next band. Now, one of the things I think that everybody's going to like about Competition Suite is we're not writing sheets.
Right.
If you're at an area where Competition Suite is being used, there's no longer a pressure to write sheets. You're just doing recorded commentary and locking in your scores. Now, I will tell you, if you're judging 6A area, you're using Competition Suite. That's been decided. We allow 2A through 5A to utilize it if they want. And I'll tell you, a lot of our area execs have decided to use it because they've seen it in action and gone, this is the way we want to go. So I'll ask your area executives to begin communicating with you, but that definitely changes the dynamics of the day. If I have a 15-minute slot, an 8-minute show, then I've got 4 or 5 minutes to really think through just my numbers. As opposed to thinking about writing a sheet with good handwriting that some of us have and some don't.
Yeah,
So.
I've lost that skill. Yeah, the recap portion, and that's an art in itself. It's kind of a summary to the best of your ability, like what Jerry said. A couple of key words that, it's the overall theme. It was dynamics were effective. Marching is a little lackluster. We had a couple of moments struggling with excellence today in this area. Little key moments that when you get to the end of the line, those 4 or 5 things strung together, and then through the course of time, they can find the exact situations. But it's really good to kind of have those in that area. And then, as he said right after that, giving yourself enough time to just focus on, okay, now here's where I thought they were. Let's really kind of study that sheet a little bit, and you give yourself probably at least another minute before the next group has to be on, and that'll be great for you to really have that decisive moment in time where we are contributing to the competition that day.
Absolutely. I'll be brief on this slide because it's really just a reiteration of something we've already said, which is our words need to match the descriptors. There will be directors out there who, after one disagreeable comment, he didn't get it. It's like, no, he got it. She understood your show. She understood what she was saying. Listen to the whole recording. There may just be one thing that maybe you don't philosophically agree on. I want to mention this, and you talked about this, the run of the day and experiencing the weather changes and all the other things, but it's also, I think, our patience can wear a little bit.
Absolutely.
And so just being patient with those later groups, understanding, they got to sleep in. That's not always an advantage. Sometimes they get the heat of the day.
They get to warm up in the heat of the day before everybody else got to. So there's little factors that we don't see right in that moment. Oh, yeah, that actually was happening 2 hours beforehand, an hour beforehand.
Yeah, exactly. So just kind of something to think about going forward. Lastly, use the placemat. Use the placemat. We're going to talk about it when we focus in on the music and the visual sheets. Use the placemat. Let it be your guide to really help you ascertain the score. I don't want you to feel like the score is nebulous or it floats in space or it's hard to pin down. It's a fairly scientific process once you start to use the placemat. So while we'll sometimes hear and or maybe have been guilty of saying in our careers, oh, that was a very subjective call. No, not really. Like a good judge, it's pretty right down the line, and it's maybe like a baseball umpire. Like, I mean, we may not like every strike called, but it's like at the end of the day, when you watch it and they put up the little box, you're
Strike
like,
zone,
yep, that was a strike. Yep, that was definitely a strike. So, just being sure you're using the placemat and that scientific basis. My last two things on this, I'll just be brief on these, is just be as current as possible. Know what those trends are. Listen to recordings that people have done for your group. Practice with your own band, right? I mean, practice. I did it with a group just the other day. Just grab your phone and start talking as if you're a judge and let the show run. Listen to exemplars. We're going to hear 3 of them today, and we're preparing even more of them for you so you can hear great judges. What's the pace? What's the language they use? What's their tone like? To try and be at that level where you are the recording they play for the students. They're like, I want you to hear, I saw Ryan Johnstone earlier. I want you to hear Mr. Johnstone's recording for us. Like, I want to be that guy. I know that you all want to be that person. Lastly, just think about sharpening the saw. Listen to other venues. Be sure that you know what's current in the activity. Take the time to go back and watch DCI finals if you haven't seen it. See what's going on in Bands of America. If you feel like you're a little bit out of that loop as you're getting into judging a highly competitive area, or even if it's an area that's not familiar to you, if you asked me to dive into a 2A area, it's a classification. I taught 3A through 6A, but I didn't ever teach 2A. Right. So I might need to go watch some really great 2A groups. I'm going to go watch TMAA. I'm going to go watch those really strong groups and go like, okay, cool, this is that's the state standard. So don't be afraid if you're judging something out of your classification comfort level. YouTube is your friend. And let it help you see. Don't watch the groups from the area you're going to be in, but go watch some other state groups that are not in that area you're judging, just to understand, what to expect.
I know when I begin each season, it's getting back in practice again, and we all kind of struggle with that a little bit. Find a couple of key groups, and while the YouTube recording is playing, practice doing a running commentary, and it'll be like, words hard to say, can't get them going, but your thoughts are there, but getting in that flow again, and it's good to practice, and that way it's a low stakes environment rather than, I'll just let it happen on the first day of the first group of the day, which is not fair to that group by any means. So go ahead and just get back into the flow of the season again. It's here, and there's a lot of exciting things that are happening all across the state, and we need to give them our best.
We're going to make 4 quick points about ethics and the ethics of judging and make sure that we cover those with you briefly. The first, I'll just breeze, is affiliation. As you're getting close to the contest, do me a favor and read the names of all the groups you're going to be judging and read the names of all the directors of all the groups, and just make sure that none of them are your family members. I think you would know that ahead of time.
Would hope so.
That you don't have any connections there that you think could be problematic. Even as a secondary affiliation, just be sure that there's not a group on there that I wrote their drill a couple years ago. I did their music. I went and did their percussion camp. Just really be mindful. We want you to be as disconnected as possible from the programs you're going to see at area. So just kind of have that in mind as you're working. Be sure that if a director were to call you and ask you, could you come consult? Could you, to say, no, I'm sorry, I can't consult with your group. I'm going to be seeing you guys at area. I'm looking forward to it. Not able to join you for that. As well on the bias front, you might get to see a really stellar ensemble during football season, and you might be blown away by what they offer you. That's not a social media post, which is where I'm going to go here in a second, to say, wow, the so-and-so band was just incredible. Like, you're inferring bias, and people are going to think that maybe you've already made your decision. You've prejudged area.
It's almost more what we put in print these days is even more powerful than what we even say sometimes. And especially people don't know the tone of way it's being said, the reference point of it. And the best thing is just to step away and don't even say anything about it. And it'll keep us all in a better place.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. On the social media front, just be mindful that anything you post. Here's how I think about it. When we're brought in to judge, if you were to ask a parent, who do those judges up there work for? They would say, oh, they work for UIL. They don't know that you've been invited through TMAA, through your record, and you're basically contracted that day by those executive secretaries to come in and judge for them. Those parents, they assume that we're representing the state on those days, and so it's just so important that leading into and leading out of it, that we're being positive with one another. I guess I'm okay with like a picture of the judging panel. Post that after the day is over. My office for the day, but after the day is over. Even during the day, like let's just stay off of the social media thing, and just kind of restart the day on Sunday morning if you want to post, had a great time, Area E was wonderful, etc. All that's great and good.
There's another area that you may be talking about here in a little bit. Let's say you're there for that beginning judges meeting and the panel's there. Don't create a storm about a group like, oh, I saw so and so at a football game. You can't wait till you see this group, or I've heard this. Let's let everybody draw their own conclusion. I think it'll become real apparent within the first 30 seconds if this group is something that's a contender. But you shouldn't be a cheerleader for one group that day just because you happen to live in an area that happens to see them. Let's let it be as fair as possible for all the groups when they enter that day.
Yeah. Lastly, on the ethics front, just be sure that you're being very positive with the other adjudicators. If you question something that happens during the day, you can reach out to that area executive. You can reach out to me. You can reach out to Brad Kent. You can reach out to Gabe Musella. Like, we're all here to take that feedback from you and understand what's going on. But we just want to be really clear that if you're disagreeing, if you have some concerns, obviously if it's an immediate concern, certainly you can bring that up. But if it's just more of a long-term concern about a particular judge, it's not the time to go to social media. It's not the time to even gossip with your friends. There may be something going on there. Just let us know, and we're here to support those adjudicators. These next 3 slides, and I promise these might be the only 3 slides I read to you verbatim today. This is the overall and overarching judging philosophy for UIL. So let's talk through that really quickly. The achievement level, as displayed by the performers at a given contest, shall be the sole basis for evaluation. Achievement results from the simultaneous considerations of content or responsibilities and the extent to which the students perform that content. Each judge must simultaneously consider both the what and the how. Each band makes a wide variety of choices. The system, the UIL system, encourages and rewards the bands that provide the public with a sense of engagement and entertainment. The scoring system encourages and rewards innovation and artistry in performance and design. It also rewards a carefully balanced variety of all the important facets of design and performance. Lastly, the scoring system provides tools for teaching and positive criticism with the goal of improving each and every program in Texas. Proper use of the UIL scoring system will provide educational value for all. It'll allow each band to project its own identity as it chooses. All performers are worthy of dignity and recognition for their efforts. So when we think about what is our overall philosophy as we dive into these next few slides and talking about balancing the what and the how in those conversations, I just want you to be thinking about that philosophy. This broadcast is going to be available as long as you need it, and so you can always go back and revisit it. We're going to get into these next few slides, and then we're going to take a quiz, and I don't mean to make you nervous. We have about 5 slides and then a quiz before we get into the music sheet, but here's what I want to tell you. These next 5 slides are going to be so important. So we'll take probably about 8 or 9 minutes just to cover these few, and it might put us behind schedule a little bit, but these are so important to what we do and how we adjudicate groups. And so I'll dive into this first one, and then Mark and I'll kind of ping pong back and forth, but here's a little bit of balancing what and how. The intent of the bullet points. I happen to be holding a sheet here. These are the music sheets. On the front of the sheet, the intent on the front is to provide an overview with all the bullet points, things like phrasing, blend and balance, precision and timing. When we turn over to the back, and this is where I'm going to focus I'm going to talk a lot about the music sheet here in a little bit. We want to focus on these questions. We should, as judges, be referring to and reflecting on as many of these questions as possible in order to give the group the best read, the best opportunity to have a good set of information going forward as to how their performance went that day. Now, I will tell you 1 or more of these bullet points is going to stick out to you.
Right.
And that's normal. That's very normal. but just be prepared for what that is. You have anything you want to add
I
to
do.
that?
I always find where I have that placemat in front of me, the group's performing, and I just keep thinking, okay, what is it? What is it? And generally, there's a statement that will pop off the page, and it'll be, that's the one. That's the one today that either that's putting us in a really special category or something that we're just a little bit lacking. And I think that you'll find that keeping that readily in front of you. And I said before, the back of the sheet, and many times the placemat is a great place to start if you're looking for how to keep yourself grounded on that day.
Absolutely. So let's talk about this. This question might be on the quiz. What is the triad of adjudication? The triad of adjudication is a threefold process that is impression, analysis, comparison. So in one respect, there's a large timeline. I put that on the bottom. For the first minute or so, as Mark said, the first minute or so, you're getting an impression of the group. This is going to be a standout box 5 always group. This is going to be a consistent group. You're getting just an overview. In that middle moment, you're really deep in analysis mode. You're asking yourself, this is what was asked of the performers. Did they achieve it consistently? Was it usually achieved? Was it always achieved? And then in the end, you're getting to that comparison mode. As you're beginning to formulate that number, you're starting to think about things like, well, I saw this other group earlier, they did this, but this is still a little better, and by how much? And we're gonna help you with some numbers management tools as we get our returning judges back, but just kind of an overview here. I also think, though, there's a smaller process where inside of any one moment, you get an impression, you go, woodwind feature. The impression I get is there are a lot of 16th notes, there's this analysis. How's it going? Is everybody playing the same volume? Are they shaping the phrase together?
It's a musical. Yeah.
Right, and then comparison, how does that woodwind feature stack up against either other ones inside of their own show, right? They might have a woodwind feature in the intro and another one in the closer. How do those stack up against each other? But then, how does that stack up for us in the day? What else about the triad?
Well, even on the same lines as you're evaluating, and it's hard because you'll have to be jotting this down. That woodwind feature, that one's a little harder because they were moving playing that one. The first one, I just noticed they were kind of standing still, maybe posed. Then the second one, that's a little bit more advanced. And then you're going, I remember Group A earlier in the day, they also had a great woodwind feature, but I think they kind of did it just kind of standing in a block. So then it becomes this level of demand, sometimes responsibilities. How much can I credit that, not credit that when you're going to head? A great memory is helpful, but also, of course, jotting these things down would be real important. Placement on the field of, wow, that was executed at, was so effective, and it was behind the back hash, for instance. Different areas that you have to just make the notes about that I think that you'll find later on become very useful.
Absolutely. So you can kind of see there, right? We're talking about the rating. That happened at the region round, right? When we're thinking about the whole process, that rating happened back at the region round, right? We understood where they were, that the current sheets, and they met those components, the philosophy of went into. Now we're getting to area, and we're doing impression, analysis, and comparison. Now, one of the things I want you to think about is, and we've highlighted this a lot today, there are 5 boxes, right? It's essential that this system have uniform numerical treatment across the day of how those boxes work, because those performance conditions, and we've highlighted this a number of times, are going to vary. The morning could be really cold, the afternoon could be really hot, there could be storms rolling in, there could be lots of things impacting this, but we have to work as judges to have a uniform treatment of how this all goes. That delineated scale, those 5 boxes, and to dive deeper, those 5 boxes broken into thirds, those 5 boxes have been designed to assist you in that proper application of the scoring system.
You'll also notice on each of the sheets, if you haven't already analyzed them, not every box or they're not equal symmetrically. Sometimes there's fewer points at the top level, like the really deserving groups. They get to have the always box. And there's sometimes it is intentional that it's broad more in the usual groups where we think maybe more groups lie there. But let's say you're judging in a final situation. You may be using more of the top end portion of those where you have to focus on those thirds of those boxes to really help you kind of narrow down. But you'll see them if you haven't had a chance, really kind of study how each box is broken down. Like I'm looking at the music sheet, and it's not even the same all the way across. When I get to content, there's a different point distribution and a point total, and I have to realize they're not all equal the same in 5. They're very intentional of how they're designed.
Yeah. Like a little bit more on the 5 boxes. That proper application also requires understanding these things, and so really understanding, and that's why you're here, right? You're a band director who understands for your 3A, 4A, 6A band what consistently looks like, what usually looks like, and you have a feel for that, because I think that that's important to set those standards. The words that we attach to these groups are really important for these categories to help guide us. So be sure you're matching the description, comparing it to our standards, and then deciding where the group is. Are they in the middle, as you were saying, or are they more at the upper end of that? Are they more toward the lower end of that? Are they almost, you're like, they're inconsistently, but ooh, it's the thinnest edge of
Right.
consistently to usually. That's why those thirds exist, to really help you pinpoint where those groups are going to set for you. Lastly, each caption box is subject to both a rating and a ranking. And what I mean by that is each one has a number, but that number also belies a group between other groups. So you're sending a message when you put the woodwinds of high school A at 150, and then you put the woodwinds in high school B at 140. Mm-hmm. Not only are you saying one is in the bottom of consistently and the other one's in the top of usually, mm-hmm. but you're also saying there's about 10 points in between those. And we're going to help you later with something called value of a tenth. We're going to help you talk a little bit about what are those differences and how do I determine what those point gaps mean, because I think that as we begin to think through that, we want our numbers to have meaning. You're right. At the end of the day, UIL is still thinking about where the rankings came out.
The ordinals.
Right, where your ordinals set. But even then, you want that number to have meaning, right? If I walk out and I get, my sheets, or I look at the total and the recap, mm-hmm. and I see that my group was all between 850 and 950, I know we had a pretty good day, mm-hmm. Whereas if I see scores between 500, but if I see 4 scores between 850 and 950 and a 1 score that's 350, mm-hmm. what do I think about that judge? I go, well, she missed it. She didn't get it.
Right.
And we don't want that for you. We want you to feel like you absolutely got it along with those other judges because you were going back to these words, you were answering these questions with the descriptors.
Yeah, the sheet tells a story, and, mm-hmm. and you see, okay, this is the snapshot from my perspective. First viewing, first impression, this is how I thought it actually played out for me in the balance of the ensemble, or maybe some inconsistencies.
Absolutely. So we're going to pause and take a quiz here in a second. And Ben is our camera operator today. Ben, if you wouldn't mind making the slide full screen here, you can take us off the screen for just a second. And there is your first quiz. Now, if you're like, Jerry, how do I take these quizzes? There are 3 different ways you can do it. If you have a device with you, a second device, like say you're watching this on your computer and you have your phone, you can hold up your phone and take this. It's 5 multiple choice questions. It's not hard, right? You can do it that way. Another way you can do it is I shared in the information slide, I shared for you everything that you need to know as far as the in the description of today underneath that slide, and it says everything you need. But I'm also going to put in the chat, in case you missed it, I'm going to put in there one thing that's called important links. And inside of important links, you can find quiz number 1 in there. And so we're going to pause for just a moment and let you take quiz number 1. So go ahead and do that, and we'll pause here for just about 2 minutes or so. And Ben, you can mute us if you want so they can have some quiet here. All right, and we just pasted as well a link into the chat of quiz 1 if you need it from there. So whatever works best for you, you can go ahead and take quiz 1. You can save all the quizzes for the end. If you feel like you're not ready, I'm going to go back and check the quiz content and the quiz grades as we get back into it on Monday. So there's no hurry if you want to postpone that quiz for right now. You're not going to offend us in the least. So we're going to dive into the area music process. It is important. I know we're not going to dwell too deeply on it today. I'm more thinking for those of you who are 1A through 4A directors, these are also the sheets we use for state. So there's a professional development aspect as we start talking about this next section. So with that, let's talk a little bit about area music and what that area music sheet looks like. So you can see on the screen there, that's the front and the back. You're like, oh my gosh, Jerry, that's really tiny. Can you make that look a little larger so I can actually see it? And then from there, you should be able to see everything you need right there in terms of what that looks like. So as far as the marching band sheet looks like for music, we're going to start and talking just about the ensemble performance. And so I'm just going to kind of breeze you through this. I'm using today, and this is just for me, I like using this, the placemat. I think, to me, it's just a little easier way to flow through things. But in looking at the placemat, I'm just going to read them to you, and then we're going to listen to our first video clip. In this one, we're talking about phrasing and artistic expression first. Phrasing, and I'll read the start of the question, sorry. To what degree do the performers demonstrate phrasing and artistic expression of the highest musical value? Consistently, usually, always? How about blend and balance that's clear and appropriate? Is that being used consistently? Was blend and balance consistent through the performance? What about a refined sense of rhythmic precision? What about a purposeful approach to dynamic contrast? How about an approach to style and articulation that's clear, or an effective performance of the electronic content when it was there, right? So you're thinking through all of these. And again, I imagine at the end of the show, if you were to answer each question, you would put a little dash mark in there in your mind, and then you would go, yeah, overall, in that side of that ensemble box, it's about a 175 or a 176 for me, something like that. Okay? So I'm going to have Ben roll this clip. This is a clip we filmed, gosh, a little more than a year ago. And in this clip, you're going to see Mr. McGahee's younger self. You're going to see Rich Armstrong from Waxahachie, Andy Seeley from Hebron, and Randy Jones from North Lamar. And they're going to be talking here for just a few minutes with you, going to talk to you about what goes on inside of Music Ensemble. Let's go ahead and roll that clip.
So as a judge, one of the things that I am listening for is you have your percussion, you have your brass, and you have your woodwinds. Are they all equally represented in the musical presentation that's being given? And I think that it's important. I know from the 1A to the 4 area, sometimes there may be a woodwind group or a brass group that is not as strong as the other group. And a director will at times do the very best they can with what they've been given. But for me as a judge, as I'm trying to determine that, I am looking to see that they're all equally represented. I know there's been times that I've watched groups that, man, great percussion, great brass, and then the woodwinds aren't as strong or represented as well. And so if I'm going to rank that, I'm going to be looking for the group that is equally represented across the show production on there, and that they're covering all of those. There is good tone quality, there is good intonation consistently, okay, or as you talked about, always there. The technique, how is the technique of the group? Is it appropriate for that classification? And then of course the accuracy there. But that's what I am listening for, and as a judge in those particular area and state, I am going to work very hard to try to give those groups that show that equally across everything the higher points. In fact, as I judge, I have those little boxes there, and I'll, the brass may get this point, and the woodwinds aren't as good, and they'll get down. And I'll do every band will be done separately, and then whatever the number comes out that's what my number is in the end.
Andy, what do you think about some of the woodwind, brass, and percussion boxes there?
Well, first of all, I really like, again, the descriptors. And of course, they're identical on the woodwinds and the brass side. For me, the thing that I'm looking for and listening for is, do the instruments sound like the instruments? Are we asking of our performers what is pedagogically appropriate and music educationally appropriate? I'm not sure that's good English, so you may have to cut that. But whatever is appropriate for student performers. So we want the instruments to sound like the instruments. We have to make sure that we're, again, for me, I'm listening for basic woodwind choir concepts, basic brass choir concepts. Are we making an attempt in the performance to show all of the colors possible in that ensemble with what the mechanism, the instrument that we have to work with, and by instrument I mean the show that we have to work with there. Are we seeing those colors? I think we have to try to have our groups and the groups that we're evaluating toe the line with regard to tone quality and intonation. We have to have a sense about all of that. We have to have a sense in the design effort and all of that about what are we trying to feature, and we can't, or we should look for, in my opinion, the variety of colors present, the variety of presentations of the brass ensemble or the woodwind ensemble and what their respective components are. You know, we're making choices all the time about whether we're going to feature this group or not. Well, is it a group we should be featuring? Are we really presenting the supporting elements in such a way that the feature comes across that way? And so there's a lot of picking and choosing that have to go on in the decision side of that for us to award credit in the performance side of that. But I think we have to expect the instruments to sound like the instruments without distortion, that we're making all those dynamic changes without distortion that we ask the kids to do, and that the fundamental tone of the ensemble is what we want the ensemble to sound like. Now, that may be a subjective thing. We may all have different definitions slightly of what that is. And tolerance levels, too, is a good way to put it. And lastly, in that regard, the percussion section, are we having expectations of the percussion section about color, about dynamics, about role responsibility? That can, you know, percussion section can dominate the entire ensemble at any given moment sometimes if we let them.
Sure.
But what role are we expecting them to play in the ensemble as a whole? And so I think exploring the colors of the drum section and then expecting them to not only be clean, so to speak, in what we're expecting, but what is their role as a percussion section in that? And then we should have the same expectations of our winds on the field as we do inside the band hall. It should not be a different expectation, and we should have really demanding standards for that.
Great. Rich, any thoughts?
You play a piece of concert literature inside, it's not, okay, just woodwinds and then just brass and then just oboe. It's everybody, and you want to hear everybody. And I think that's one of the challenges at judging, is because you do want to give woodwinds credit and you want to give brass credit, but it doesn't always have to be a feature where they're down parked. And we've learned and that you don't have to do that. And sometimes getting the ensemble to sound good, it's just a balance. It's like changing the way you balance so that you do hear the woodwinds even though the brass are playing. And back to the quality sounds and the quality intonation, those are all a given. You want to have that. But it comes back to, why can't the whole band play and you hear that color from
Hear all
top
the
to bottom?
colors, yeah.
It's not just trombone heavy. It's, you hear the brass, you hear the woodwinds, and it's just beautiful. And when you have that, it's just a big sound. And I think from a judge standpoint, I'm looking for that. I'm also looking, do you feature? Can they play? Do they have technique? Are they showing off? But at the same time, is it all quality? And it comes back to is it clear what I'm supposed to be listening to, and is there clarity?
Yeah, so that
Awesome. Welcome back, everybody. Sorry, we ran that clip a little bit out of order. Maybe you noticed that.
See if you're paying attention.
I was telling Mark, we flipped the classroom a little bit. We gave you a little bit into the woodwind, the brass, and the percussion one. So I'll loop back to those, and then we'll roll the ensemble clip a little out of order. It's okay, right? All great information. So with that, and I hope going into the woodwind sheet, you notice that the woodwind, the brass, and the percussion divisions on the sheet are exactly the same for the most part. The percussion one's a little different. Obviously, like percussion intonation is, unless you have a timpanist, I guess, not something we're going to dialogue much about. So let's bop through those, and then we'll go back and dig into that ensemble clip here in a second. But when you think about woodwind performance, are we using appropriate and characteristic tone quality? This is Texas, and groups are expected to play with good tone quality.
As Dr. Kent says, it's the hallmark of our state is how well we play. And let's really show off that the best woodwind performers are in our state.
Right. And when we think about tone quality, intonation, hand in hand, right? Playing with great intonation is going to be incredibly valuable there. How about inside of technique and rhythmic accuracy? I mean, that's the other thing. Is it in tune? Is it in tone? Right? Question 1, is it in tone? I'll go out of order. Question 2, is it in tune? Question 3, is it in time? Right? And then you can look down the sheet consistently. Was it consistently in time in the woodwinds? And then last but not least, how about blend and balance? Could you hear it all the time? right? Was there an opportunity for you? And it's interesting that we're saying this now, but we flipped our clips a little bit. But this next ensemble clip's actually going to talk a little bit about how does that go, and can you hear the woodwinds inside the full band sound? Is that something that's coming through? How about, and you heard it talked about there in that last clip, are the percussion dominating the colors of the group? Or are things feeling a little bit more balanced inside of that? Just real quick, the brass one's the same. In percussion, the only real changes that you see is that it talks about a refined sense of rhythmic precision and then technique and rhythmic accuracy, right? Rhythmic precision being one thing, rhythmic accuracy in terms of how that percussion section complements the ensemble, especially when you're thinking about front ensembles. Some of us at the 2A, the 3A level might use stationary percussion at the back of the field. There are a number of challenges that we see inside of that. How are the students, again, we talked before, what and how are those students achieving the challenges that we've set out there for them? And of course, inside of percussion, blend and balance throughout.
Quick statement with this. I want to challenge all the the adjudicators this year. Shouldn't be the only time you address the percussion section is how loud they played.
Absolutely.
Again, back to our very first comments about the educational meaning of what we're about. So taking those other 4 bullet points, see if you can really work those in. Hey, I think the technique is great. I really could hear the roll speed. I could hear the transition between the different sections, and try to be real intentional about that, not just hey, the drums are too loud here, then you kind of move on. Let's get all the performers on the field. They've been working for months. Let's see if we can give them the credit they deserve.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to go back and roll an ensemble clip, which, again, it all makes sense. As we know, all these things are interrelated. We're going to roll this clip that talks a little bit about ensemble. Ben, go ahead and roll that clip when you're ready.
Absolutely. I believe that as I'm listening to a group and I look at that particular first area of ensemble performance, I think of the word together. When you look at, are they together when they start and stop their notes? Are they together when they play their phrases? Are they together when they get loud? Are they together when they get soft? And so are they together in their approach to the musical phrases and lines?
Mm-hmm. Andy, what do you think about when you see that first ensemble performance box?
Well, I think first of all, I think there's a lot of really awesome things in this ensemble box out there. And the thing that I want to be aware of as a judge or feel is intent and purpose. That there's been decision making going on there, and that the performers are following the plan. We want to hear that with regard to dynamics. We want to hear that with regard to phrasing. We want to hear that in terms of the uniformity of the style of articulation that they're playing, or the way the articulation is being delivered. So that choices have been made and the performers are executing that choice. So some really purposeful and thoughtful intent of
Real
the music.
intentional there. So
Yes, absolutely.
very good. Randy, what do you think about that first box?
All right, well, I want to agree with both of these gentlemen. As a judge, when you get into the area level, one, you're trying to, at that point, trying to determine and put a group in order. And so as I am doing that and listening to that, I am trying to the point of, where does the group go? Are they doing the phrasing? Are they doing the dynamics? Okay, does this one group present more a picture in the dynamics? Was there more expression in that? As far as, so to allow me to be able to more accurately put each group where they need to be in that. So as these two gentlemen have already commented, all of those things, the blend, the balance, the precision, are we not having precision problems front to back or side to side? Is there some musical expressions that you're using dynamics to help us bring forth the picture that is there? So I'm trying to determine, looking into that, how do I get the points in that when I'm doing that? So.
You hit a really good point. I think on the new sheets that everyone's going to be able to see, there are descriptor boxes now that are placed not only on the sheet, but it's among every category. When you're talking about where a group belongs, there's boxes that include always, consistently, usually, sometimes, and rarely. And of course, at the area level, we already have, or even at the state level, we have some above average ensembles, so we'll be using a lot of those top boxes, but our minds definitely should be kind of going there, what everybody was kind of alluding to what degree are we doing those things? Are we together, of course, being intentional, and of course, being able to say this group all of a sudden could be great in timing, great in performance, great in execution. So I think it's going to be great, and the judges, I think, are going to love it when they get to see this.
All right, welcome back. So again, even though the clips were out of order, I think it probably still made a good bit of sense to you when you're thinking through that placemat. And I want to encourage you. And I know Mark highlighted it. I mean, I am the guiltiest person about looking at the placemat the whole time I judge. And I think that, honestly, I feel like the read that I'm able to give groups, the information I'm able to share, my judging desk, as it were, is generally the placemat. And Mark was talking about the list of terms. I usually put it right above it. And honestly, like, that's all I need besides a little notepad right here.
Sure.
You know, and from that, I'm able to ascertain. Now, I have to be careful to not get caught inside of a percussion section that may be struggling, or a really outstanding brass section. Like, be sure that the woodwinds are getting some love. Be sure that the percussion section is getting some love. All those things are really, really important.
The term sampling is what we're talking about. Just continue to try to sample. Again, don't fixate on one of them, and just keep an order, whether it be something you're going from left to right or you're moving around the different parts of the ensemble. But again, be real intentional as you're keeping your eyes going, keeping your ears going throughout the whole performance.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I think has entered into, and I had the chance last year to really, from the press box of the Alamo Dome, see 1A through 6A over those 6 days. Electronics have become a really vital part to what we're doing inside of the marching band community. And so when we look at that landscape, I think we're presented with some unique and interesting challenges that we need to consider, that we need to just kind of be prepared to tackle, and how we want to look at. And so again, a couple years ago, we went and toured the state. We went down to Leander ISD and had a chance to talk with Mike Howard, with Robert Sladen, with Eric Cosman, and with Mike Zellers a little bit about when you're beginning to layer electronics into your show. How does that go for you? And what are you listening for early season in order to be successful? And as an adjudicator, what do you want me to know? And maybe some of us who have judged have a ton of experience, and we've been in front of a mixing board more than we care to think about. And there may be some of us who are like, well, I was transitioning out of the activity as that was becoming a thing, so I don't.
It can be real intimidating.
Yeah, well, and I think having that expertise of like an Eric Cosman or a Mike Zellers to give you some commentary, who are doing it at really high levels with both high school groups and at the drum corps level. What are we thinking about? What philosophically is important to us? So, Ben, let's go ahead and roll that electronics clip for them.
Yeah, so specific to the area sheet, you know, I think it's, as an adjudicator, it's a challenge because you want to keep integrity of each of these subcaptions, and you also want to look at the whole picture. I think as you go through the program, it's important you take opportunities to not get too hung up in sampling one thing that you miss another. You want to take opportunities to really dig into the woodwind sound, really dig into the brass sound, really dig into the percussion sound, and of course the effective use of electronics should they be choosing to use electronic reinforcement. I think it's important that you, as you wrap up listening to the ensemble, that you give yourself enough time to accurately look at each box when you're looking at that area sheet, which for any of us that have judged area, we know that's a challenge. You've got a short amount of time, and you want to really give each subcaption its specific due and integrity. But from a judging perspective, I think making sure you've got your due diligence and that you're constantly sampling around the ensemble, never allowing yourself to get hung up in one spot, makes you a lot more successful at the end as you go from caption to caption to caption to caption. I do think, the new sheet gives us an opportunity to, as a director, looking specifically at the area sheet, to make sure that all the colors in the ensemble are present. And it gives the judge an opportunity to really sample all of the colors in the ensemble. So are we hearing, when we hear the electronic sounds and the amplification of the group, and I know if I think back to how we were amplifying our woodwind ensemble in 2016 at Vandegrift, it was not representative of how those instruments were supposed to sound, but I fast forward to some better choices that we made in 2017 or 2019, and I think we did a better job making a flute sound like a flute and making a clarinet sound like a clarinet. But I think that this is another thing that this sheet can give credit for, is making sure that we're making smart reinforcement decisions with electronics that also bleeds into, effective use of woodwind playing, or if I'm amplifying percussion, effective use of percussion performance. So yeah, on the director's side, I just think it's a great opportunity to help ensure that all of the colors are shining through in one single sheet.
Yeah, I really like what you're talking about reinforcement. To me, effective use of electronics, there's kind of three almost subcaptions, if you will. There's reinforcement, which is just taking acoustic instruments and making them able to be heard at the top of a giant football stadium, right? And then there's your soundscape, which is all of your synthesizers, your sound effects, all of those synthetic sounds. And then you've got kind of your processing, which is like you take an acoustic instrument and you run it through electronic to create a totally different sound. And I think when you're looking at really what is an effective use, looking at those three different things, not just is it blended well, balance is obviously something that we focus on a lot, but in addition to that, is the timbre correct? Does it sound like a flute? The big thing when I'm reinforcing a sound is what I'll do is I'll have it, I'll get it all EQ'd up, reverb, whatever, and then you just turn it on and turn it off. And when it just sounds louder and softer, that's when you've got it. All of these EQs and reverbs and all these things, those are tools that our ears hear an instrument versus a microphone. It's going to color the sound a little different. So those are tools, and the speakers color sound as well. So those are tools to fix the inaccuracies of those artificial elements replicating the sound. So, when you're talking strictly reinforcement, I think reverb is a big thing where sometimes we overdo it. The purpose of reverb is so it sounds like what you're seeing. So if you've got a flute player who's 2 inches from a microphone, it's going to sound like that. So you add a little bit of reverb so it sounds like they're more in a room. But when it sounds like, they're huge in the Grand Canyon, that's not really what a flute sounds like. So I love the reinforcement.
Unless it was in the Grand Canyon.
Unless that's what you're going for.
Yeah, then I think that's where intent comes into all of this. Is I think when I look at this sheet, look at these sheets and you have the different things. It's all about intent, what you want to come across. And I think that the electronic side of it kind of touches every side of this, or can affect every portion of this sheet. When I look at this sheet, and I'm thinking as an adjudicator, I think about this as a two-show day. For area, you have prelims and finals. And when I'm trying to go through this sheet, and I'm going through the sheet, and as Mike was saying, trying to hit all of those spots, it's pretty hard, especially on the electronic side, because you might not be dialed in for that room of the day. So you're playing in a stadium you've never been in, and you're not dialed in. Your stuff isn't right. So as an adjudicator, it can be tricky to read through that and actually still try to find those spots. So I think in that first read, I think as an adjudicator, you bring up these issues. This is a balance issue. There's too much reverb on that solo for, my taste. Your EQ on that solo, it doesn't sound like a flute player. In that first read, I think you're getting those things out. And at that point, it's the job of the band director to get in there, listen to those tapes, and make adjustments for the night show. And then hopefully at that point, you've went through and made a lot of adjustments and really kind of taken that feedback and used that. And then on the band director side, if you get that feedback and you decide that's not what you want to do, then that's not what you want to do, because you're trying to be true to whatever you're trying to present. So for me, it comes down to the intent and trying to get everything to come across clearly. And I think, for me as a director, when I go into this, sometimes the intent of what I'm trying to get across is not what the judge is reading, and sometimes that needs a second show for that to come across. I think in the past, when it comes to electronic and balance, the presence of electronics has been an overbalance. And I don't know that that's necessarily a direction that we need to be heading, globally. Now, the presence of electronics within some shows, if you feel it and you hear it there, it's way too much then. But if you're presenting something that's pretty modern, you can't have a modern presentation without that voice being there. So at that point, when you hear that, that's kind of an element of that. So I think when you're putting together your shows, just try to be clear about your intent, and then, that's for this format. We never get to kind of speak with the adjudicator and say, here's what we're trying to do, But On the other side of that, if someone's saying this isn't coming across clearly, your idea is probably not coming across clearly. You know, it's like the hill of artistic integrity is a lonely hill to die on. You know, just because you think it's that, might not be that, you know.
The quotable Mike Zellers on that, the hill of artistic integrity is a lonely hill to die on, might be one of the favorite experiences we had recording all those last year. You know, one of the things that we think about when we're adjudicating electronics, I don't want you to be afraid to talk to them. I don't want you to be hesitant to dive in and have those conversations with the bands as you're listening to the groups. I thought what Eric said was really wise, which is, does a flute sound like a flute? And not just a flute on a microphone, does it sound like a flute? One of the exercises of just playing it and turning the microphone off, listening to the flute soloist, turning it back on, does it sound correct? Is it the same as is it an all-region sound? Is it an area, all-state performer sound?
Same richness, same color, yeah.
And if you want to add an effect to that, if you want to add delay, if you want to add reverb, if you want to add distortion or something kind of out there, that's cool too. But I think really thinking through and being highly intentional with how you view that and how you couch those moments, I think that's super important to how electronics layers into the show when it pulls you out in a negative way, when it makes you notice it and it's not. And again, as Mike was saying, you might choose really modern content, so it may have a lot of electronics in it, but if it's pulling you out of your ability to judge because it's either overbalanced or it's super uncharacteristic tone qualities, I don't want you to be afraid to talk to it because you go, oh, that's electronics and that's new. I think we're at a place now as an activity where it's not new.
Right.
You should be able to do it well.
It's a color that's been used a lot in the composition, yes.
Yeah, you should be able to do it well now. So with that, we play an exemplar for you, and I don't know that Mark's gotten to hear this exemplar, so this is going to be good. He's going to be able to react to this in time. So one of the things we wanted to do was give some exemplars of judges, and of course, with the use of Competition Suite at State, it allowed me to pull both video and audio from State and play those back, and I have the consent of these programs and their directors. And so this first one is going to be, this is 5A prelims. We primarily focus on 5A groups this year. So this is 5A prelims. This is Julie Davila talking about music ensemble at State prelims. So this is a group that she's seen, she feels like is a solid group. She offers some comments in the moment, offers some comments for the future. I know what you're going to like about this. She's definitely bought in and showing appreciation and a sense of reward for the group.
Yeah.
In addition to that, she finishes up with some critical commentary and some things they can work on. And so, again, this is 5A prelims. This is Wakeland High School, and thanks to Tanner Smith for allowing us to use this clip. So, Ben, if you'll go ahead and roll this clip for us.
Yeah, blend of synthesized sounds to boost that moment, along with percussion. With the staging of the percussion backfield, I felt like they were a little understated in that. Wow, velocity on the field handling. Really strong moment for you, Wakeland, with the physical demands. Beautiful low brass, all right, bring it. Woo! Yeah. Excellent with that field coverage, a really excellent sense of balance and blend, energy that all the members were giving. Particularly challenging physicality of that last 30 seconds as well. All right, Wakeland, really enjoyed it. What an impressive program, top to bottom. Yeah, I certainly appreciate all the challenges environmentally, physically in the program. You know, one comment just moving forward is just trying to dial in the 2D moments so that, you know, I think it's just a minor balance issue right now, just making sure we hear full choir of woodwinds through the middle voices to the upper brass in some of those 2D moments. I think the synthesizer perhaps might have been contributing to a little bit of dominating over the woodwinds at times, and I'm sure in a second performance you'll be able to dial in some of those balances. Really enjoyed it. I hope my comments have been helpful. I want to wish you the best of luck.
Julie's awesome. She's great.
It's a great recording,
she's
yeah.
Really good.
So what are so what are your reflections on that? And I mean, I think some of you at home, it is weird for us to hear a group that's not our own group.
Oh, yeah.
And go like, oh, okay, so that's, and I think you can, I don't know, I mean, what are your the positives,
Sure, initial impressions, I was already thinking the what and the how. She was giving many statements that were for the Watt. It was consistently always, it was great. You're doing upper level areas. So I sure she had some kind of content number in her mind that was probably in that zone. And then, of course, the excellence of it, she was addressing all along the way about, wow, that was super. You executed that well. The physical demand of that, like recognized the content and then pulled it off. So I think it was a very matched number already how she was going through it. I was just thinking, how is she going to put that down in some kind of number form? She circled back around again to the content part of it, and she used the 2D moment. So I would expect, especially the woodwind brass, the percussion numbers to be in really, really great areas. And then, of course, how do they all come together? Do the sum of all those come across there? Not that the ensemble number is going to be lower, but again, it's how they mesh together where we're trying to hear the woodwinds throughout the ensemble. It doesn't need to sound like it's a drum corps in the field. We need to appreciate the colors of the woodwinds on the field. And then she did address the synthesizer at the very end, where could have been one of the reasons, hey, that's why sometimes the balance was skewed, was it resonating more. Maybe that worked outside, as we all noticed in the clip, that was indoors in the Alamo Dome. And there has to be a certain setting and some kind of, okay, that we maybe have to tone that down a little bit because of the environment. I thought it was super encouraging, and I would go, yep, she's spot on. She's nailing us there. So great job, Julie.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think when I listen to a recording like that as a band director, I both feel positive about what we did, but I also have my marching orders. If we were to earn a finalist spot, I would go, well, these are the things we have to tackle going forward. And so we're going to, not only are we going to have some more exemplars to share with you today in visual and one that's really specific to content, but in addition to that, we're going to share some exemplars with you online over the next few weeks. Just the audio, excuse me, not the video. I just let you listen to the audio and get that sense of pace, because you noticed Julie had some good moments of silence where she was allowing the ensemble to perform, reflect on the performance.
Right before the hit, I think, is where she was really just kind of soaking it in, if I remember correctly.
And I think that's also critical, because those directors, as directors, we know she heard what they had to offer. She made some commentary to it. So, Ben, if you could switch this over for everybody so they could see the quiz that's coming up. This is quiz number 2. This quiz is all about the music sheet. I am also going to post it there in the chat if you'd like to grab the quiz from there. I just dropped it into the chat for you. So go ahead and take just about 2 minutes. I'll have Ben mute us out, and we'll give you about 2 minutes of quiet here. And I want you to take this quiz, and we'll be back with you with the visual sheet in just about 2 minutes. Great, we're going to be coming back in here. I know some of you are still quizzing, and that's A-okay. This next part, Mark's going to walk us through a little bit of the visual sheet. Now, I know you're asking a question. Jerry, you didn't talk about the content box. Yes, we are going to talk about the content box at the end of both sheets. So we're really thinking right now inside of those performance areas of how the performers are doing. I mean, there's a component of what in there, but we focused on the ensemble, the woodwind, the brass, and the percussion. Now we're going to focus on the visual performers, both as an individual and as an ensemble. And then we're going to pause for a second and kind of shift back to music content and into visual content as we wrap up the hour here. Okay, so I'll let Mark take it away, but here's a little bit. Ben, if you wouldn't mind putting up the slide of the front and the back of the sheet so everybody can see that.
Well, it's hard to see, isn't it? Hard for my eyes to see that too. We'll cover each of these. The sheet is, of course, divided into the individual movement and then the ensemble movement, contents on the bottom. So again, I want to reiterate the statement made earlier. There's no official marching style in the state of Texas, and again, it's whatever adventure we choose, we're going to try to go down that pathway. Focusing on individual, I know sometimes this can be a little intimidating. When we put the sheets together, they were designed, early aughts, and marching was a big word that was said a lot, and we had the word visual sometimes, but we really wanted to expand the vocabulary of this, and then body movement. Overall movement is real important. Marching is a component, and of course we also know choreography is used, understanding terminology. I want to challenge you before now, and when you judge in October, just Google basic ballet terms, basic movement terms, just to kind of have those. And many times you can go to YouTube and there'll be a brief example of it. Not that you just need to spout them off, but if you can say, hey, more than the thing where you go down lower on the ground rather than saying, hey, it's a plie, or you could even come up with a verb for it or something, but just come up with something you can. I know that's a little intimidating with expanding vocabularies to make that happen. The sheets are set up exactly the same. They go from the same boxes at the top of each one of them, always consistently, usually sometimes and rarely. And then again, focusing on the placemat on the back of that, I'm going through some key questions there. To what degree did the performance demonstrate a refined sense of achievement with regard to form and control in intervallic relationships? Being able to get the depth of the training is really clear. A term I like to use a lot, and it keeps in my mind, do the students look trained? And also, we're talking not just about color guard members, are we? We're talking about all performers on the field. It's the battery percussion section, it's the woodwinds, the brass, and of course the color guard are extremely visual to make that happen. A refined sense of rhythmic precision and timing with regard to movement. Can they keep their the pulse that's happening? Are they able to execute this little leap that happens across the field? Can they move their feet across the field? Individually. Of course, there's easy to get comparisons, and that's, of course, more in the ensemble part of it. A clearly communicated style of motion from performer to performer. And again, you're asking these key questions. Is it always happening? Is it consistently happening? Some things you'll notice of like, wow, that person obviously is a stronger senior because they're moving right there. This person just looks younger. It looks like they're really struggling. Well, it's our job as teachers to be able to kind of make that happen. Of course, when now the adjudicators, you're seeing a trained ensemble where those little nuances have been figured out, and we're having the younger students rise to the older students. A statement that was discussed a lot was a sense of poise, presence, and communication throughout the performance. Later on, we use the word professionalism. So sometimes that gets to be where we're, what does that mean? That could be a subjective term, but we felt it was important that it made the sheet, sense of poise and presence. Jerry, what comes to mind when you think about that?
Well, first off, I want to say to poise, presence, and communication, that's not on the Regent sheet. It was,
Right.
and purposefully, and Mark chaired that committee, we talked about that on the Regent sheet, and we said, no, that's an area thing. What I'm looking for is not only do the performers recover when a mistake happens, but also just think about when they're in moments of transition. We all have the moment where the woodwinds either march or scatter to the backfield after a feature or something like that. How do they hold themselves in the moments when they're not on the stage, when they're not the focused element?
Right.
Are they still really important? Do they still have a sense of character? If the show is Edgar Allan Poe and the Raven, does it still have a sense of melancholy to it? If the show is this big celebration moment, do they still have that on their face even when they're not the center stage performer? That presence, that level of communication, that sense of poise in the moment when a mistake happens, when whatnot goes wrong, like those, I think, are what really lift up the elite groups at area.
Absolutely. I give lots of credit for groups that recover well. I think that's a skill in itself. They not even just falling down, but there's maybe a drill set wasn't quite locked in, there was something that kind of happened, but then they make it up at the next drill set. And then to kind of reiterate your point, we don't have the luxury of being on a stage where the curtain is drawn to the side, where they get to go off stage. You see this sometimes with members that are exchanging equipment, or like there's members that are coming up for different parts and they're a soloist. We can still see you. And we're still observing you, and you have to stay in character. Yes, there's certain things you have to maybe get another instrument, et cetera, but that can be done in a very professional way. So look into that. You will find there will be some groups that will be considered some of the top ones at your contest that we'll be able to do. They'll have that, I just call it the it factor. They kind of have this, they walk on the field with a certain level of, they've got it, and they can live it up through the show.
Absolutely.
The final bullet point in individual is successful effort to recover from errors, and we discussed that with recovery. So again, it's vocabulary. A group doesn't have to have everything on the field. The groups that do have it want to challenge you to recognize what they're doing, and that's pretty advanced, and they're doing something that's it's a more of a contemporary moving style, and then they go right into a traditional marching style. Think of the training that had to go on with that when they had to teach multiple sets of fundamentals. They had to talk about execution of that. So it's being able to credit that and be able to recognize it. And then, of course, just because they have it in the show doesn't mean all of a sudden, well, all of a sudden they're the top group. To what extent to do it? Is it effective? Does it provide clarity? Does it provide support for what's happening? Is it effective for the moment? So being able to get those things underway.
So before we do, yeah, absolutely. So before we do ensemble movement, maybe we'll watch a little clip, kind of break this up a little bit, let you hear from a bunch of folks on it. So this clip is going to be Joni Perez and Matthew Rummel, and in it, they're talking a little bit about some of the different aspects of individual. They're going to touch on some individual, but they're also going to touch on some ensemble inside of this. But this will kind of bridge the gap between us talking with you a little bit of individual and ensemble. Let's go ahead and roll that clip for everybody.
Sure. I can get into like a lot of the nuts and bolts of what I feel would be a part of adjudicating in that area. And one of those is just, the students show a simple awareness and understanding of things like spacing between each other in the form as the form develops over time, right? Do they show an understanding of how the form should expand and contract and that such those things from set to set? Does a student maintain a consistent step size from the start to the finish of the phrase? And do they understand, what it means to travel in a straight line path or in a curved path, or if it's a follow the leader? It's just a basic understanding of what is the form that I'm in and what is my individual responsibility within that form and throughout a phrase. Things like maintaining upper and lower body control, through various tempos, different step sizes, various directions, forward, backwards, slides. So you could go on and on about like the nuts and bolts of how that all affects, their control of form and interval as they move throughout the show.
And I think something that we're seeing a lot more of in the past few years is the layering of choreography on top of all of those elements as well. So it oftentimes is not the first thing that we think about as teachers, like what is their spacing as they're doing a dance phrase moving across. But once we start to get to the area sheet, and then eventually as you get to the stage sheet, what will set you apart is, are you able to do all of those things in your choreographic moments as well as just your straight marching and playing moments? And then on top of that, are you choreographing something while they're playing as well? And those that I think really achieve at a high level are the ones that are able to pay attention to, their body, the form, their interval, their control of the equipment, especially as you're starting to ask them to do more than just straight left, right marching.
Yeah, and being able to do things like that with your group and teaching them that kind of awareness and that level of detail through simultaneous responsibilities and demands, that's going to be one of the things that sets your group apart, from all of the others, is when you can look at a particular group and see that it's not just, okay, we're marching this set of drill here, but oh my goodness, there's this whole other, responsibility that they're having to have while they're doing XYZ to maintain that level of concentration and clarity and form and detail so that it's communicating clearly upstairs.
Which I think as a judge is where we get to the last bullet point of recovery, where that's important.
Right, and that goes with like the level of professionalism that you see on several parts of the sheet, and the poise, and how that energy is communicating upstairs through the individual level, and that the fact that a student can recover in a situation like that is a huge testament to the training that they've had and just the mental space that they're in when they're performing.
And then I think with regard to those last 4 bullet points of the precision and timing, demonstration of individual style, poise, presence, and communication. Those are important things, I think, to consider when you're judging, especially as you get towards the back half of the season, like being able to see that professionalism from those students and really take that into account of their ability as a performer, and how that should really weigh heavily for you.
Well, and I think one of the major parts of what everybody needs to understand when they're looking at an individual caption on a sheet is students understand it, and the judges understand it, directors understand that the individual contribution, the individual awareness, the unified approach from person to person is paramount to what you're going to get upstairs. So both, field and ensemble go hand in hand in that respect, and I think that gets lost sometimes in translation. So whatever you can get your individuals to understand at that very fine level and to understand it at the same magnitude from concept to concept and from portion of show to portion of show is going to translate in a really effective way upstairs that's going to be engaging and it's going to communicate just really clearly.
Go ahead, Mr. McGahee.
Sure. I want to move ahead to the ensemble movement. If you have access to the sheets again, and when you get a chance to see them, I think you're going to see something unique here. It's the exact same topics are talked about.
Yeah. Hey, Ben, can you put the sheet up there for everybody? There you go.
There you go. Being able to move on to the ensemble portion, exact same terms, like it talks about a refined sense of achievement, precision regard to timing, depth of training, some of the exact same things we were just talking about. Now it happens to be, of course, with the comparison to the other members of the ensemble, the uniformity that's happening, being able to see repetition, being able to see now a cohesive unit that creates that power of like, wow, now we have the intervals that are relation to, but also now the individual responsibilities, their relevance along the way. So important. A lot of times we, at the region level, that's all we kind of address. It's just kind of like, we talk about the forms and we talk about kind of a little bit about the marching style, but sometimes we get fixated on the intervals. Now we see it's just a portion of it, and you can now see, okay, the individuals that I were addressing earlier, that's why that form looks bumpy, is because we're arriving at different times. We're having people that are struggling with the actual technique that's been prescribed for them and achievement levels. Being able to put those together. Professionalism. That's the key word you'll see on here. Professionalism in all aspects of the presentation. Kind of ties in what we said earlier, but I remember that was one of the key words that we talked about, and what does that mean to you? And that's something where I think that try to really define, encapsulate it in what it happens in a judging environment. But anything with that one, Jerry?
No, I think that, again, when we go back to that professionalism aspect, so what is group professionalism?
Yeah.
That's where perhaps an error happens. I know we're about to talk about recovery, but perhaps an error happens where the group has to react.
Yeah.
Where it's an error made, and I know we're going to talk about props in a little bit, but where a prop placement is done, where a rifle toss that's supposed to happen inside of something suddenly is 5 yards off or something like that, is, how does the group handle that? But then also, going back to what you were saying in terms of uniformity, I like to look where the group doesn't want me to look. You know what I mean? Like
secondary and tertiary. Yeah.
I view it like if you're getting your house inspected. Like if you're the guy selling your house, you're like, please don't look in every.
Don't look in the closet. Yeah.
Right. But at the same time, if you're buying the house, you want them to look where I least expect them to look. You want them up there in the attic, moving the insulation around, looking at things. It's the very same thing. I think when we think about professionalism, and especially separating the top 5 or 6 groups at an area contest, I do want you to think about looking in every nook and cranny, which often means this is the brass feature that's going on over here. Don't look at that. What are the color guard members over here as they're transitioning from rifle to flag? How are they handling themselves as a rifle line as they transition to flag? Is it in character? Is it done professionally? Or are they scurrying and they're not thinking about their posture as they do those things? That sense of professionalism in terms of precision and uniformity, I think.
Right. Talking about color guard exchange or change in equipment. Sometimes it's the detail of we arrive in a ripple, and then all of a sudden we get our equipment there and they still have the same character in their face, and they all of a sudden leave in a prescribed time. It's like that. I went, man, that's great that they went to that much detail for something that was happening on the back sideline.
Yeah.
And I love seeing that. A musical comment that kind of ties into the recovery part of it all. It happens where an electronic something doesn't trigger off at the right time. How does the group kind of respond out of that? Hopefully it's nothing catastrophic, but hopefully it's something where, hey, look, they can still all of a sudden arrive at the right tempo. The show wasn't relying on it to make that happen. And sometimes, like, wow, that took a lot of professionalism for a group of students to be able to achieve that. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. And lastly on that, like I think about as we kind of work our way through the ensemble, it is what Mark said, it's sampling. So while sampling on the individual movement where you were looking at individuals going down the saxophone section, going through the tubas and watching them, sampling here might mean from a uniformity perspective or from a just kind of a professionalism perspective, looking at the flutes and just watching the flute section march as a unit, watch the trumpets march as a unit, and how are they matching each other? Do their postures, how does their horn carriage look? So again, that's something that is going back into the individual but pulling it forward into the ensemble and just kind of showing that relationship that the ensemble is is comprised of a bunch of individuals.
Sure. It'd be neat to hear over time that you're even referencing that. Like, boy, I enjoyed watching the flutes perform. Trumpets had the exact same characteristics coming on there. Now all of a sudden, low brass, you're having it's kind of like you have the same energy level as you are sampling. You're letting them know that, hey, I'm seeing this, and here's what I'm looking for. You're not just calling out a student, hey, side 2, 35-yard line, you're missing this. You could address that moment. Again, don't dwell on it. Address it is what it is, and then kind of keep moving on to the next group after that.
Yeah,
I think the next topic we're going to cover is not only just the performers on the field, but I call it the furniture on the field. It's the props that we all are a big part of it. I guess it has to be something evaluated a little bit, and it does have its merit where we can't ignore it, but we have to give it some credit for the groups to do it. Again, it's not a requirement by any means, but it is something that can really, really put the finishing touches on a presentation.
Yeah, Ben, you can go back to our faces for a second, and we'll cue up this slide for you in just a second. But when we talk about props, one of the things that I often hear is directors say to me, "Oh, well, whoever has the most props is gonna." And I don't think it's that. I think it's all about how you utilize the equipment and the things that you choose to bring onto the field that help further your theme. And we're going to talk about content here in a little bit. But when you choose to bring out a bunch of sofas or whatever that might be, a bunch of shapes, a bunch of triangles on the field, there's a challenge that goes with that too. Yes. That's not a freebie. It's not like, oh, you put stuff on the field, you get credit for it. And I do think maybe 20 years ago it did feel that way a little bit.
Right.
But I feel like now the expectation is you're interacting with that prop.
Yes.
It has a purpose. People are either moving it around on the field or people are referencing it throughout the productions. And so we asked this question of Joni Perez and Matthew Rummel. We said, tell us a little bit about props and, what are the challenges that you all think of when you choose to program something with a larger prop? And so let's roll that prop clip for everybody and let them kind of see a little bit of this.
So it goes further than just the performers transitioning from prop to prop or the color guard transitioning from onto the field and off to the field and then back on again. Those are things that we see constantly that do need to be attended to if you would like to get that ensemble toward the top half of the sheet, or to get your own ensemble to be able to get to the top half of the sheet is attending to all those odds and ends. But for sure, the performers that are moving around props, they're just as integral to the entire performance as the musicians on the field.
And then in terms of transitions, pauses in between movements and breaks, whether or not students are maintaining or if they're staying involved in the performance during those moments. If your color guard is having to have an equipment change and you can't really hide what they're doing with a prop or a flat or whatever, are they moving with a purpose? Are they moving in character? Is there still drill and form control and everything like that as they move into that? Or is it just a function of what's going on? Do they lose you from a performance standpoint or from an ensemble moment standpoint? Likewise, in between movements, how do you captivate your audience and engage your audience and have your students demonstrate that we are still performing for you, even though the show has stopped for a moment, right? Or there's a silence, or there's a dip in the energy, that there's this constant awareness of what the ensemble is supposed to be communicating in those times.
Talk about that when your interaction, and it gets us the motivation of having a prop on the field. Sometimes it's great that they are a backdrop and they are providing a setting. Sometimes some performances look like they ignore them, or in some ways they're an obstacle. Like, wow, that really impeded on what the drill form was doing, and it was placed in a way that's really awkward, or it was something that caused more interference. And it'd be great to see that it was interacted. It's thought out really well, and then, hey, let's take everyone over there and let's create a moment around it. It's a staging area, and it's something that creates something thematic. And when you see that, recognize it, and again, what was the training for the students to have to go in there and like, wow, that was really slick how they put their instruments down, they did something visually, and then they were, one by one picked up their instruments again. I thought it was so thought out, and recognize it, talk about it, especially if it's done at a high level.
Yeah, and I love that Joni talked about when there's silence on the field, what do you do?
Yeah.
I think, and I feel like the trend nowadays is we're seeing less and less silence in shows. Everybody's washing over those spaces.
Content, yeah.
Right, because it is a little awkward. And your performers really have to elevate those moments. And so as an adjudicator, our role is to, kind of as we were saying earlier, you're an inspector. you're really going in and doing a good, strong analysis on everything you see, breaking down all of those small moments, and just diving as deep as you feel like you can in terms of where the individual and the ensemble movement are. And so we're gonna come back. We've got a visual exemplar for you in a little bit, but before we do, I want to dive into content for just a little bit. Why don't we go out of order a little bit and talk a little bit of visual content first, because we're going to come back to that visual exemplar here in a second. Before we do, mention one quick thing. In those quick links that you saw underneath, if you click on the little arrow that's next to UIL-TMAA, or if you're watching it on a full screen, I have a guide that we asked Matthew to develop for us that is terminology and questions for color guard. Just like Mark was saying about the ballet terms, if you're a little unsure on those things, I think he did a great job of boiling it down into very simple language. How do they release the catch? How do they all catch it? Are they doing anything under it when it's in the air? Are things going around together? And from a content and a thematic perspective, does the color match what you expect it to be? Does the size of the work impact the size of the band sound? If it's a full 2D moment and all the flags are out, that makes sense. A full 2D moment with a single color guard performer, we kind of scratch our heads a little and we go like, oh, that's not, doesn't quite sit as well with me. So I just maybe want you to reference that sheet. And again, if you feel like the color guard thing is a little uncomfortable to you, if you feel like it's something that is maybe a little bit of a challenge to you, have that sheet referenced, read it, look at it, and just kind of reflect on that.
I think also to fight the stereotype we said of only addressing the battery percussion, like the drums are too loud, it would be, oh look, that's a pretty flag. Well, you're addressing the equipment. You haven't addressed the students on the field again. Let's fight that stereotype and like, well, not only have the terminology, wow, that was great. What a great moment the performers did, and then I recognized a cool body move underneath it that was show thematic along the way.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead. Ben's with us. Let's go ahead and roll that. There's a visual exemplar in there. This is going to be Jackie Gilly. This is state, gosh, now I can't remember if this is prelims or finals. It might be finals. This is Aledo High School, Joey Paul's group. And she's giving them some visual commentary as to the performance. This is, as I recall, kind of right after the intro of the show as they're getting into their opener. So this is pretty early on. You remember we talked impression analysis comparison. You can hear Jackie's moving from that impression mode a little bit into the analysis mode. You'll hear her. This is only about a minute long, but check out this one. Go ahead, Ben. Let's roll that clip.
Excellent use of the gesture arm by the color guard. Excellent job as we bring the full ensemble together. Excellent understanding of the shaping of that arm. And what a great job of staging the color guard around the band. And handling the responsibility so well with use of the body underneath the equipment. Same thing with the band, the visuals with the lower body. Thank you for the simultaneous responsibility here. Yes. Excellent job of visual musicality from the color guard. It just seems to stop one count earlier than that drum roll up. Excellent with the visuals we come across. Strong uniformity, including with the horn visual. Thank you.
So again,
Well,
Jackie's one of the best. She's able to identify, especially with regard to the color guard, but also the band. She does a good job of saying what's done and how it's done. And you notice she's not using overly technical language.
Right.
I think she says with the color guard, good use of the gesture with the arm.
Right.
She doesn't
Very
use
broad term.
Yeah, and again, I don't want you to be afraid to say good use of the gesture with the arm, good use of things like that. Those are, I think, incredibly valuable just in building what that is and what we're moving toward.
Words that kind of resonate with me. First of all, she catches everything. She is great. She addressed like, that's really cool. That's thought I really well. This is a little robotic right here. In that term, it was, okay, you're doing that, and that would tie in, of course, to depth of training resulting in clear uniformity. It's not an overly negative term, but it kind of puts it kind of not in the always box, but it's probably in the consistently box is how I would kind of use that area. But recognizing along the way, she also paused at some great times, and then when she got there, and you could tell she was sampling. She didn't just fixate on the color guard. She was talking about the band proper, doing about different things, and then of course the ensemble, the holistic view. But again, a really great example, if you are judging visual, think about the pacing of what she says and I guess how she's using her narrative along the way.
Yeah, just really strong. So we're going to invest these last. We've got about 20 minutes left before our returning judges, and I've seen a few of you check in, returning folks. Thank you. Feel free to say hi in the chat. We're going to do just a few minutes here on the content box. As I mentioned to you earlier, we skipped over content and music and content and that, and I've put, Ben, if we can put up for them on the screen the content box that's on the slide, and let's share a little bit of what we're thinking about here in terms of content. I'm going to read the music one, but in all honesty, the visual one and the music one, they don't really differ that much. They're complementary. They're a little bit of hand in hand. I'm going to not use the placemat, but I'll just read the front of the sheet. And it's coordination and effective use of all performing elements. And to pause, we'll just kind of pause after each one. The coordinate is everyone on the field involved in the moments, and as they're being involved, how is that taking shape? How is that impacting the performance and the production? I don't know. Any thoughts on just like how do you evaluate that?
Well, and here's a really basic term. I think we all get it. They're choosing to use all the crayons in the crayon box, not just the red, yellow, and the blue over and over, the same thing. They're choosing to do that. Think about electronics. That's a whole new color palette. Think about, hey, with the woodwind group, I wanted to do this. Hey, and there's even variations. Hey, this is, it's a more of a pink-orange color, and they're coming up with different blends of ensembles. Keeping a variety, how we would see a well-composed concert piece of music, they're thinking about some of the same parallels that go with that. So that's the area I would immediately go, that's more than just the same presentation over and over, the same group of people I keep seeing doing this, and it's a different combination. Oh, it's a variety of that one. It's a different range in her tessitura.
Yeah, and variety, I think, is key, is that every impact isn't visually an arc shape in perfect concert kind of setup with the color. But that we take some moments to make the audience scratch their head a little and go, oh, I didn't expect that, but that's really cool. How about the second one? The effective musical reinforcement of the visual, and then the visual version of this is the effective visual reinforcement of the music, is when the music is fast, does the visual also imbue that? When the music is slow, when the music is dense, does the visual complement that? And that's not to say that juxtaposition can't be utilized. You can still juxtapose and have like two really different ideas and put things a little bit. I think when we did this session, and I don't know that I rolled this clip, but Jody Rhodes talked about if you're doing a show called Rhapsody in Blue and you bring out an orange flag.
Right.
I mean, if that's a juxtaposition that you
Makes you
chose,
think.
it does make me think as an audience member. And so just that effective reinforcement, though, how do those kind of go hand in hand? Any thoughts on that one?
As trained musicians and band directors, we all recognize this when we go to a movie that's real effective. Like, wow, that was a great soundtrack. And that's what this is. There's a movie that's on the field. Did the soundtrack really enhance it? And of course, conversely, the other way around. We have this great dynamic soundtrack, except there's a little bitty moment that happens with a color guard, or all of a sudden it was the drill form was kind of not exactly matching. So they think about it in those terms. When you are really moved at a movie that you get to watch, did all of a sudden the soundtrack and everything just come together at the right time? There was a reason it was thought of that way. That's the best marching shows do the exact same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Now these next two kind of partner together well, these next two bullet points, and that's the suitability of the music or visual content. Is it written? Did the staff write for the group that they have or the group they wanted to have? Did they write for the students and what they could perform? But then also, what is that frequency and the demand of the music while they're playing? We sometimes are hearing from groups, oh, the best groups are just standing still for all these moments, standing still. And it's like, well, that doesn't necessarily mean we're marching. We could be doing choreographic content. We could be doing some other things. But inside of that, when you think through as an adjudicator, not only suitability but frequency, how do you get that sense that like maybe somebody's in over their head or vice versa, maybe something's a little too easy?
We all know that groups are trying to have a competitive product. They're trying to have something that has levels of demand. Like, hey, we're going to feature key soloist, key ensemble, play a sophisticated piece of music. I go to the how. I go to every presentation that has this level of demand, or most of them, for instance, they're not being achieved, or they're being achieved usually. And so that's when I get this common theme of this is great, but there's not been a level of refinement, or it's the group they think they have in their mind versus the group that's really on the field. They just haven't trained them to be able to do that. They're maybe asking them to play too loudly, and they can't play fast enough to do it, for instance. But coming across with both areas. Again, it's the achievement level that really tells me, hey, this is great. I see what you're trying to do. I hear what you're trying to do. But again, the level of refinement needs to be at a higher level to be considered in the conversation.
Yeah. That content with respect to challenge is very similar in terms of that bullet is how is the content challenging to the ensemble? We're going to see groups that are going to have written something that the performers by October the 22nd, by October the 29th aren't yet fulfilling. That doesn't mean they might not fulfill it by state if they were to advance, but those are things that we watch that arc of development. By the other one I want to talk about at the bottom, and this is one that I've had a few veteran judges say I want some more guidance on, continuity and flow. The way that I like to think about this is if we're, after our training today, if we're all going to go to dinner, there's a certain flow to us sitting down at the restaurant. The wait person comes to the table, they take our drink order, they come back with our drinks, they ask if we have questions about the menu, the entree, the appetizer comes out, there's a several minute gap. There are meals that we've all been to that flow really well, and then there are meals we've all been to that everybody's looking at their watch going, where is that
We have been
entree?
waiting a long time. Yeah.
Right, and so I think that marching band shows are the very same way. There is an accepted flow and pace. Sometimes we end up waiting too long for a moment to set up, just like we wait too long for our entree. By the same, sometimes you're getting served so many things on top, you really can't even keep track of what you're being served at the same time.
Right.
And so how can we continue to dialogue with groups about continuity and flow?
Sure, and I think we should address it when it's done well. You want to give the audience a chance to applaud. You don't want to try to cram in so much content that it happens. And that doesn't mean you have to stop everything down. I think that has been a formula that's worked before, but it's okay to have a big moment arrives and we're there and then we applaud, and then maybe it's a transitional, it's an outro moment almost where there are soloists and the front ensemble are playing. The audience can still applaud, but it's a slow pan that takes us to the next movie scene. And it's appropriate. They know how to respond. Not that we don't want to hear that soloist, but it's obvious they've created this little ebb and flow of now we're going to go on this other journey that takes us to the other place. And just recognizing when groups have gone through that level of detail in their performance, try to utilize every second to the best of their ability and give everyone a chance in the audience a chance to really contribute. It's not just being yelled at the whole time, but it's something where they can actually participate and get a chance to show the performers that, hey, we really, really are encouraged by you and we want to give it up for you.
Yeah, there's a story time to it.
Yeah.
There is that feeling like we're being drawn in by the ensemble. And so just something to think about inside of those content boxes. Again, they're very complementary of one another. And so many of you at Area are going to judge music prelims and visual in finals or vice versa. And so knowing that content box isn't really a reframe, instead you're just looking at it perhaps through a different lens, but both the visual and the music are hand in hand in that box. And so I thought we might check out one exemplar inside of this. For this one, I went to the great Nola Jones. This is her commentary for McCallum. This is also, I think, state prelims from 5A last year. This is their ballad. And so I think she has an opportunity to talk about how they're moving from the soloist into the ensemble inside of the ballad. So let's take a listen to Nola's clip. And this is really specifically focused just on the content of what's being offered here from the group. Go ahead, let's roll that clip.
Challenge. So I want to be
lower body information softens this musical statement over on stage left. Yeah, and the restage for the woodwind is actually motivated by the way the saxophone solo evolved there. Technically, that was cool. Woodwinds, you have to sing. You're staged back there by the mirrors, and I think that's a really great staging opportunity for you. Lovely moment there between the metals and the woodwinds. What great coordination there. Yeah! Yeah, great moment and the Altissimo Register, and how you turned everything backstage to make that happen.
Awesome. So
She's the best.
we get to
She's
hear
awesome.
a little bit of Noel, and you can see she's really carefully crossing visual music. I mean, she really kind of takes in the whole thing from the 30,000-foot view. Again, at area, we're still going to be in our silos, in our music and our visual silo, but that's not to say that one doesn't influence the other.
Right.
And how those moments set up, and that we can just be really, and I don't think we want to rewrite the shows for the groups. It's area. They've got at most a week and a
Right.
couple of days
It's
left. We're
done,
not
yeah.
there to rewrite, but just to say, like, this is a woodwinds you need to sing here. You know, woodwinds we need to make. Like, those are comments that you could take from prelims to finals to your group in the parking lot and say, hey, woodwinds, the judges are asking for more here. And we all know our kids have another level they can bring.
Sure, and like she recognized they were close to the back mirrors, that were close to the back of their form. Like she's recognizing that, commenting on that when you're kind of going into that little world and swirling back around again. Hey, let's bring it out here musically. You're back behind the rest of the form.
Yeah.
It's really good.
So we're gonna take a break here in just a moment. Before we do, Ben, if you'll bring up this last quiz. This is for our new judges. If you're a returning judge, you do not need to take quiz 3. You're gonna take quizzes 4 and 5, though you are welcome to take quiz 3. I will absolutely score it for you if you want. But this is for our new judges. This is the last of your quizzes. Remember today for the quizzes, if you don't see the link or if you're not able to scan it on a duplicate device, inside of that link that I shared earlier, you will be able to find, it's right underneath where it says UIL-TMAA Area Marching Band Judge Training. There's a set of links there, and there's one that says Important Links, and you'll find quiz number 3 linked right there. So we are going to be back with everybody here in about 7 minutes at 3 o'clock, and we'll start back with our new judges. We're going to leave this quiz link up for 2 minutes, and then we'll just put a hold screen on for about 5 minutes. Please go use the restroom, get yourself a drink of water, and strap in for these this last little block of time that we have. Maybe you already took us to the restroom with you. I don't know. We wouldn't know at this point.
That's a little awkward if so, but yeah.
But go ahead and take a little break, stretch your legs, and we will be back with you right at 3 o'clock. Thanks. All right, welcome back. To all of our, we shouldn't say older, experienced judges.
That's right. Veteran judges.
Our veteran judges, welcome back. We're excited to have you. I'll just reintroduce really quick. I'm Jerry Miller.
Mark McGahee.
We're excited to be with you to talk about the UIL area judging process. We have invested the last 2 or so hours with our new area judges. We've been talking about the music sheet in detail, the visual sheet in detail, and a little bit about content. We talked about props. We talked about electronics. We went into a lot of areas. All of these videos, I will have the download of this, and I'm going to break them up into some chunks because I think like a 2-hour video is more than I might click on to review. I'm going to break it up into just music, just visual, just some of those little outtakes, and I'm going to share that with all of you so that, here we are on, September the 11th. You're going to be back on October 22nd judging area, October 29th. That's going to feel like years, especially during marching season. It's going to feel an infinite amount of time away. And so I want to make sure you can go back and click on it and watch these clips and go back and just kind of feel good as you're getting your mind in a good place about that.
Yeah, they're great too. The content level of it, having the exemplars, having just some video content and refreshers. We played some things we played last year, kind of down to an edited version of our other panel discussion. Just so many great comments from all of those great music educators.
Absolutely. And so Ben is helping us today. He's doing all of our camera work. If you'll bring up the slides so that we can kind of begin. We thought we might begin with probably the question that a lot of you veteran judges, but our new folks as well, asked a lot about, which had to do with numbers management. And we're going to talk through kind of a 5-tiered system of what are some techniques, some advanced techniques, but also for our newer folks to manage my numbers the day of area. And so we're going to spend about 30 or 40 minutes really diving into numbers management. So if you've been with us before, if you've come to my region training, you've seen this, which is impression analysis comparison. We know that this is how we arrive at a score for groups. We know they came through the region process, they received ratings and rankings, and then that was derived at through getting our impression of the group, our analysis of how well they played and or marched, and then their comparison against historical norms as well as the other groups at the contest. I would like to add, that kind of scaled out a little worse than I'd hoped, a few more ideas for you, and that is using thirds, numerical scale, the value of a tenth, subcaption integrity, and subcaption profiling. So we're going to talk more about the early ones. We're going to talk more about thirds and scale and value of a tenth. When we get to subcaption integrity and profiling, we're going to pick up the pace just a little bit. These are 5 additional tools that I want you to have in your toolkit. So everybody here has either judged area before, and you've judged music and visual, or you just went through the last couple of hours with us. Now we're getting into a little bit about just kind of where we go from here. So let's dive into using thirds. When we think about using thirds, what we know is that there are these 5 boxes, rarely, sometimes, usually, consistently, and always, and each one of those is broken into 3. And I thought we might just kind of do a definition, and maybe I'll read a little bit what's on the slide, and Mark, just let you kind of react a bit. The first is a lower third. It's called emergence. This is the group in the bottom of the box, to the left-hand side of the box. This means that this group, after you've seen them, and again, think about your placemat. Let's pick a question as we're starting and playing this game a little bit. I'm going to go over to the visual sheet, and I'm going to choose an ensemble movement. I'm going to choose precision with regard to timing, right? How well are they moving as an ensemble with regard to timing? If I were to say this group is consistent, they're consistent. They're not always perfect.
Right.
But it's not usually. I mean, it's consistent. Okay, fair. Now, where inside of consistent do you think they need to be? If I think the lower side of consistent, these are the things I think. That they're the next bridge to that lower box, that they display most of the components inside of consistently. However, there may be a moment or two that makes me go, oh gosh, they might be usually.
Kind of hanging on, barely.
Yeah, as you see it, you just go, I'm not sure that could flip into the usually category. As a judge, as you begin evaluating, you might have some doubts. You may be like, gosh, this could be usually or consistently. Right. Though I don't know. I mean, sometimes in evaluating a group, I feel like it's consistently, and then I'll sometimes trend into usually later in the show because it's maybe some of the newer material that they've learned. But when you think about the thirds in that lower third of a box, what are you thinking about?
Well, and just again, I want to make sure everybody understands the terminology of this, and we're not talking about necessarily the third box. We're talking about each of the 5 boxes you can see, the beginning level of it. It's the left-hand side of the box, as Jerry said. So we're just now squeaking into consistently, squeaking into always, squeaking into usually. It's a decision maker a lot of times when you have a group that's kind of in a pack. It's where do I start sifting them out? You're going to hear the other 2 terms in a moment. I use that sometimes when I consider these 2 or 3 bands are in contention to win the contest today. They are in the consistently box. Guess what? They're starting to approach the top box. Like, how exciting. They're starting to kind of barely say, wow, that was like a box 5 kind of moment. But then everything else was kind of, it's good, but it's not quite that box 5 moment that you showed me 30 seconds ago.
Yeah. And so that lower third, as Mark was saying, you think about the 5 divisions of rarely, sometimes, usually, consistently, and always. And we're talking about that far left edge, that bottom side. The middle of the box is realization, right? They have realized what it is to be a consistent ensemble, or realization of always, which probably won't come up at area very often. That would be a stretch, I think.
Yes.
Inside of that, what we're thinking about is the band typically displays nearly all the aspects of that box.
Yeah.
There aren't a lot of things in the lower box, but by the same, there aren't a lot of things in the upper box either. They're just like so again, to pick another question off the visual sheet, in the individual category, a clearly communicated style of motion, right? They're very consistent as you look around. Can you find variation? Absolutely. We are not at always yet, but is it at a term where it's usually, where it's in that 70% range? No. It's not. It's 80% accurate, and that's sometimes I see people use that word like they're in the center of the box. They're dead center box 4 consistently.
It's a benchmark kind of concept. Yeah, and think about maybe the 3 or 4 visual things that you've talked about. I've talked about training. I've talked about step size. I've talked about arriving in drill sets too soon. And think about the 3 or 4 themes, and then you're going, yep, I talked about them being kind of in the dead center of that. They are consistently doing that. Sometimes a fancy word is paradigm, and so they are become, that's the paradigm. Like they epitomize who we're looking for a box 3 performer in that area based off of these 4 topics.
Yeah. Now that last box is called fulfillment, right? Some of the components displayed with a distinction that begins to lead into that higher box. So let's do a music one. If I were inside of the music placemat, I might choose a question under ensemble performance, like a purposeful approach to dynamic contrast, for instance. I could look on the sheet and go, well, they are almost always. I mean, that's kind of what I say. They are almost always.
Right.
It's just shy of that. So there may be some of their dynamic contrast moments where it feels like everyone's bought in. It's 100% there musically. Percussion are there, brass and woodwinds are there. Everybody's doing it correctly. But then there's like that 1 or 2 that just still leave you over inconsistently. So that's how you're going to end up at the top of consistently with your number there. What else about fulfillment?
Well, in the overall topic of numbers management, you're saving those fulfillment and then entrance to level. That's like these are my special points. I'm going to give these just to these top groups that I think that really could reach that level, and then when they get there, go, yep, that's a group that I want to be able to put in that area. A band displays more of these components as the next higher level. The band who's closer, and again, it's the performance of that moment. It's not how they did in prelims, even though you made a different topic there. It's like this moment tonight, you really captured everything about that, and they stepped up their game a lot, and hey, I'm going to reward them for it.
Yeah. Well, and you kind of segued well into this. This is something that was shared with me from another state that I was judging. I thought it was really useful, but they showed these bar graphs, and they said, what if you tracked, this is just 8 random moments, 10 random moments across the show, and you were to give each one a score, you see it goes up to about 90. They didn't hit into the always category. Sure. They stayed in there, but you can see that first moment is kind of there, and boy, they had a good consistent almost into the always box moment, but then they had that ballad. That ballad really got them, and they
did them in, yeah.
They got down into it was a hot day, and they got down event 4, event 5. They came back up in the closer a little bit.
Yeah.
okay, so here, let's overlay another group. So here's our orange band. So the blue band is off the field, and then the orange band takes the field. And the orange band starts incredibly strong, but no one moment is better than the opening company front kind of like fanfare thing that you were like, that was great, but that was the greatest moment.
They've had it since August 1st, so they're ready to go,
When this becomes our challenge as judges,
Yeah.
is that you're not just seeing, yes, ideally the groups would be ridiculously consistent from moments. All their moments are a 92,
Yes.
but those are going to be your always bands.
Yeah.
You might see a group that's always, I'm going to rephrase that, you may be a group that frequently puts you into the usually box, and they just feel like they're in the middle there. But understanding that bands have different arcs of development, of teaching, and so many things play a factor in that. The weather, the challenge, what they've been battling with eligibility. There are so many factors that can impact this, but your openness to understand that just because the first moment was good doesn't mean the last one's going to be good. And just because, let's I got one more for you. I got the gray band. Here's the gray band. Anytime the full ensemble plays, it's amazing. But anytime there's a soloist, anytime there's a small ensemble feature, you can hear the lack of depth in the ensemble.
Don't peek behind the curtain too much.
Right.
Basically,
And so, again, when we're trying to determine and align these things, I just wanted said, especially for our newer folks, if you think you're going to get consistent bands across the board that are going to act the same in all 10 moments, they're not. There are going to be some, and your role is to take that line, that crazy jagged line that you see there, and derive a number from it. Now, the good news is we help you with the placemat with all those questions, because if you start asking all those questions, and as we talked about with our newer judges earlier, you're judging through time, then you're going to see these things. And so this is really an example of judging through time and trying to weigh where those moments are and tracking a band from moments. So it's just a different kind of way to look at how we use thirds. We're going to move into something called numerical scale next. Now, numerical scale, and this is going to be, I think, for those judges who felt good about the thirds last year. I had a lot of judges tell me that. They said, I felt really good about using my thirds and how that went. We're getting into some more advanced placement judging techniques, but I know some of our folks are AP level judges, and they're ready to dive deep in. Before I tell you too much about numerical scale, in the description for the video there, right underneath it, I have a little hot link that says important links for today, or important links. If you click on that, you can actually pull down the tote sheets and the judging resources digitally if you'd like to have them ahead of time. And I have a spreadsheet on there that you can use, that you can bring in with you and actually type things and build all that out.
I used it last year. It was really great.
It's really colorful. It looks like that. And just can kind of help you. You can see it has each of the 5 boxes, and it shows them in green and yellow and red for top and middle and bottom. You can use the black and white version if you don't like the color version, and that's fine. When I talk to you about numerical scale, what we're avoiding here is what we call getting boxed in. What we mean by getting boxed in is that we're assigning numbers that are a little bit too tight, a little bit too soon. And if we assign numbers that are too tight too soon, we can find ourselves in a really tricky spot. And this happened, a few of you made this comment to me. You said, Jerry, I got to lunch and I'd used everything between 850 and 900. I'd seen 14 bands and I'd used a lot of it. And so I think that when you begin thinking about numerical scale, there's a couple of techniques that I think help us that I might offer to you that you could try this year and see what you think. Generally speaking, with that first block of bands, I try and find a number that ends in 0. 0, maybe a 5, but I try and stick to 0s and 5s, and it keeps my tote sheet. For example, let's say this is my block right here, and these were my scores. I saw 10 bands in the first block. That's a big first block. But you might see 40, right? And I did a 760, a 640, a 600, an 830, and 910. So when you see my tote sheet, you can see the black or where I've assigned groups. I got a lot of room.
Sure do. I have a lot of space.
I have a ton of space, knowing that there are 3 blocks left. If my tote looks like this, I'm feeling really good. And don't worry, I'm going to show you a bad example. And sorry in advance, I actually used a real recap to show you a bad example. And then in the next block, I'm still trying to stick to 0s and 5s as much as I can. It's not hard to do when you're doing your subcaption numbers.
Right.
Just think about using numbers that end in 0 and 5. Don't use a lot of 2s. Right? Again, if you absolutely have to, it's okay. You can. It's your show sheet, and you can break the rule. But when you're thinking about scale, this is a good technique to keep you out of trouble and to set up a scaffold for the day that you can then continue to fit groups into. So you remember there was my first block. Here's my second block. I used 705, 625, 685, 430. Again, I used some zeros that I hadn't used before.
We're able to obviously put groups, the 705, yes, they were a little better in that group. I had space to go there without all of a sudden putting them into another category of ensembles.
Right. And so look, going to lunch, here's my tote sheet. I am going to have a very relaxed lunch, because I know that I've only got about, and again, I did a 40-band contest on my example, which that's larger than nearly any area we're going to see, right? So I still know I am in a very good place if I need to fit, if I see, and well, wouldn't that be strange in a random draw if you saw just a whole bunch of groups that all had similar profiles?
Right.
I just don't think that that's very likely. So I go forward. Now I'm going to use, and again, you can pick your numbers. I use 2s, 5s, and 7s. You can. Some people use 3s, 5s, and 7s, right? So I build that in. And now you can see I still used a lot of ending zeros. I kind of built out some stuff. Here's where I am now. I still, going into that last block, it is statistically pretty much impossible at this point to box myself in.
Right.
And don't worry, I'm going to show you an example of what happens when a judge boxes himself in. So in the fourth block, I can use any number I want. I just need to fit them all in, and I don't have to worry anymore. And that's what I end up with. And there's my final tote sheet when I'm all done.
You know, the one thing I like about that immediately is I didn't have to create a narrative that doesn't exist. They're a usually performing band, and I've used all my numbers, so I guess I have to bump you up to consistently. With this form, you have the space. Like, nope, I can still negotiate where you're on this side of the line rather than this side of the line, and I can still give you an accurate profile and keep your relevance in comparison to the other ensembles with that value of the 10th.
Absolutely.
That's great, yeah.
Absolutely. So while mean referenced, with 1,000 available numbers, which is what you have as an area judge, we should be flexible to allow for better numbers. So I'm going to just show you a scenario. I think I may have actually, no, I didn't put what area it was. I'll just remember it in my head. This was a judge. I'm not going to go through all the details of what this judge did. But at the end of the first block, they were looking fairly okay. That's a little cozy right there. You can see in that 939, 934 spot, they kind of squeezed a little bit. Uh-oh.
It's getting tight.
They went to lunch, and they already had bands at 939, 937, and 934. Now, they've only seen half the bands of the day. What if the afternoon has a lot of strong groups?
Yeah.
Like, this is, for me, this is a little bit of anxiety. If I see this on my own sheet, I'm getting real nervous. Okay, you ready for box 3? There's block 3.
That's tight.
And now you're really in trouble. At block 3, because you've really confined yourself to numbers between 920 and 950. Now, what I would say to that judge is, have you been using the placemat?
Right.
Have you been using the placemat? Have you been asking the questions? Have you been mean referencing everything onto the words consistently and always and usually? And if you were doing that, you should not be having these struggles.
I agree.
So what else? I mean, what other advice can we share with judges about just kind of numerical scale and how we can avoid boxing ourselves in?
Well,
Anything else?
I think I'm making a true statement, not only with competition suite, but also these sheets are being, quote, held. I can go back and adjust my numbers.
You can address them anytime.
And it's especially, let's say it's right before lunch. Why don't you use that as an opportunity to say, okay, this kind of played out a little more trickier than I thought. Not that I'm going to go throw everything else away. I'm just going to give myself a little more spread. I've kind of moved things around. It's the space between the ensembles that I think is appropriate, and I haven't changed any placements. I'm giving myself some room. You can adjust on the fly. This is fluid, and it moves, and you have an opportunity to get yourself in a better place going into the last block, someplace where you can breathe for a second.
Yeah, because, I mean, I'm telling you, it can get scary. And we've all judged that contest where we had to reopen our numbers just a little bit. Just don't be anxious about having to open up your numbers. And you'll see, we're going to talk a lot about Competition Suite after we talk about numbers management and some of the advantages of being on a digital scoring system as opposed to the paper sheets. But Brad Kent has been really clear with us. You can revisit any sheet at any time for any reason. You can just say to that runner or the area executive, may I have back my sheet for Brad Kent High School? I need to review that really quick. And then you can sit there and make the adjustments you need to and return that sheet. They'll recalculate it and do it if you're on a paper sheet. In Competition Suite, you'll just do it on your tablet.
You can just change on the spot.
Yeah, no, and I mean, you really don't have, there's no discussion involved there. So again, I wanted to just cover a little bit of some advice in terms of numbers management. And again, this slide deck, if you want to revisit that, if you're a numbers person, want to break that down further, this slide deck is available there for you. Let's talk about the value of a tenth. Again, we last year, I feel like we were rolling out these sheets and we were coming back from COVID. We didn't talk really deeply about some of these more advanced techniques. Some of you read about them in the manuals and you kind of pulled them apart. But I thought today, especially with our returning judges and our newly trained new judges, we could talk a little bit about what is the value of a tenth. And so when we think about value of a tenth in terms of scoring, we're not really talking about subcaptions. We're talking about your bottom line score out of 1,000 points. And that number has to have meaning in and of itself because you answered the questions based on it. But in addition to that, it has to relate to other groups. There has to be some sense of, and so I thought I might give you some levels as far as like, well, Jerry, what does it mean when groups are this far apart? How should I read that as a judge? And share a little bit of our values of a tenth with you.
A key word that goes with this are the term neighborhoods, groups that are, you'll see in a second, that are so many points away. You have defined neighborhoods, like you saw in the previous sheet. There's little groups along the way. We all want to be in the top neighborhood, but again, some of us have to live in this certain neighborhood or where we are in the contest, but you'll be able to see that kind of play itself out with a natural gap in between before the next group plays.
Right. So here's our first value. These are the groups that are next door neighbors to one another, right? This is between 1 and 60 points out of 1,000, right? So if you think in terms of 100 points, if we want to think scholastically, these are groups that are only about 6 points apart. And what I would say is that they're essentially equal with some just minor differences. They're even with 60 points in between. Could be a reversal between prelims and finals. If band A was above band B by, let's say, 40 points, and then band B takes the field, it could flip. If band B has a great show and band A, in addition to that, they may have differing strengths in particular boxes. Understanding that maybe from an ensemble, again, go to the visual sheet, ensemble perspective, B is really strong. Individual perspective, A is really strong. And those strengths between prelims and finals can shake out. But when you think about it, and here I'll show it to you on a tote, right? Look at how close those two are. I mean, those are really close together. They're in the same neighborhood with each other. That's a cozy little setup there. What else on that?
Yeah, and like you said before, you may be on the same caption. You most likely are changing captions, but so-and-so gets comfortable, Group A gets more comfortable in prelims, you can tell in finals, man, they have settled in. They're ready to rock the house. And you can say, hey, here's I had Group A and Group B this close together, different captions obviously, but now I can see a decisive difference along the way. Or something happened and it was like, wow, that was really intriguing. I didn't really quite understand that. You're at the lunch break, you're thinking about it a little bit more, like, that was pretty cool. I really think that was a lot more in depth. When you get a chance to see it a second time, you recognize something more about it and you go, that's really cool. I had no idea that was going on the first read. And so you get a chance to actually do something and you can say, nope, I want Group B to be able to be my top score tonight.
Yeah, and notice what I would generally say is they're within half a column of each other.
Yeah.
You know, if you cut the columns in half, they're within about half a column of each other. Now this next block are groups that are spread between 60 and about, again, out of 1,000. So if you want to think in terms of 100 points, they're between 6 and 12 and a half points apart. This means that they have identifiable, objective, narrow differences. It's nuances. It's just one of the groups is a little more polished. It's maybe a little more professional than the other. If we held the contest a week later, like this would not happen, okay, but I'm just going to do it one. If there were bad weather and finals got rained out and they said, come back next week, rehearse, come back next week, well, this is not going to happen, okay? But if that were to happen, that these groups could switch. Or if both groups were to advance out of area,
Right.
we could see them go into state and possibly switch places.
Absolutely.
But it would take about a week of rehearsal for Band B to catch Band A if we're seeing that 6 to 12 or 60 to 12 point gap. What else on that?
Yeah, and like he says in the first bullet point, identify objective narrow differences. It doesn't have to be across the board. It could be where one group has our percussion section and our brass section are doing really well, but the other groups have above average woodwind, brass, percussion, whole ensemble. But like the woodwind part is kind of like your deciding factor in some ways. You can think of it that way. And I don't know, it'd be exciting to see. It'd be a tight run.
Yeah, I do. I want to answer. We had a question over here that I wanted to look at that came up from Dr. Laird, who asked the question. He was talking about, are we afraid to use that lower portion of the scale? And I think it's okay. Now, one of the things I want to think about is coming out of region and into area. Many of these groups have earned a first division. You're right, there are provisions whereby if not enough groups earn a first division, that the judges are moving on other groups. And so you could potentially see a second division group. But if you notice how small on the sheet rarely and sometimes are, that's part of our attempt to kind of keep those separated a little bit and make sure that we're not going to see a lot of scores at area because they've already been vetted through. And that's not to say it couldn't happen. It couldn't fall apart. Some really, tough eligibility situation knocks out half the drum line. And just, they were leaning on that for the show or something. But I think for the most part, you're going to be dealing in usually consistently and always.
Yeah, and the time of the year also dictates that a little bit. They've had practice time. If it was a contest that happened this weekend, absolutely, we'd probably have some groups in that level, but the area contest obviously doesn't live in that part of the calendar. So I think, like you said, it's going to be a lot of upper echelons. Give yourself enough points to work with, but it most likely with that first division validation, they probably are at least at a certain baseline now.
Yeah, absolutely. But good question, Dr. Laird. Thanks for asking. Again, to show you that 60 to 120 gap, it basically means they're within a full column of each other, is where they're another week or so, but that's where you're trying to spread those groups out. And this goes hand in hand with what we were just talking about with using thirds and emergence and fulfillment, where we talked about numerical scale. This value of a tenth feeds into that as well by keeping things really open. Think about, is it possible that you would have 10 groups inside of this little 60-point range going into lunch? I can't imagine that. If you've only seen 14 groups, 10 of them shouldn't be inside of that range. Now, we have two more categories here. Okay, this next one is there's between 125 and 200. These are a quarter of a sheet away from each other. And here there are significant differences between the descriptive words you're using. These are easily identifiable, meaning that a member of the audience with little musical training recognizes that Band A is that much better than Band B in this scenario. If the contest were a month away, perhaps things could change. But at this stage of the game, those groups, prelims to finals, there's not going to be a switch if we're seeing gaps of 125 to 250. And I'll show it on the scale, and I'll let Mark kind of talk a little bit about that.
Well, it's you're only one neighborhood away. You're probably two neighborhoods away from being with that other ensemble in the same field.
Yeah, and you're just, I don't think you're going to see those type of drastic switches. And then, of course, the last, as you'd imagine, is any group who's 250 or more away. And at that point, there's not, especially with a contest on October the 22nd or 29th, they're not going to catch up at any point during this season. You're talking about groups that are half of a sheet away. And these are, I'll go back to that slide real quick, but there are multiple significant differences. So where one group, you were saying consistently, and in this group, you're in the upper end of consistently. Maybe you even trended into always a little bit, so you were upper box 4, lower box 5, and then with Band B, you were low box 3. There's just not, those are not even in the same they're not even in the same zip code at this point.
And here's an example that comes to mind. So we're talking about that big spread at an area contest. Was that good enough to get us a first division level at a qual level? It was. But now we have split the sheet up for the first time. We start discovering, the woodwinds really are not contributing to the performance. Visually, our level of demand isn't quite what we thought it was. It was clean, but it's not necessarily, it's a very limited vocabulary. Or the percussion section was the whole show was built around the percussion section, which got them a first division, but now suddenly, okay, that's great. give me the brass section, give me a soloist, and you never do that and present it. That's where I can see that would happen at an area level contest.
Well, and it's funny, as you asked that, we got a question over here, which is Derek Woods was asking about color guard.
Yeah.
You know, and just as you were saying with percussion, it could be a group that marches at an usually level, but boy, the color guard's ridiculously consistent.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. I mean, you know, but again, we're going to see those variations that are going to cause some of those bottom line totals. If we're being very honest on the sheet, if we're answering the questions, if we're using the scale, we're going to be able to recognize and reward those groups that really do excel at that level. But we're also going to be able to hold back where we need to hold back and be sure that we're able to deliver educationally appropriate criticism to the groups who maybe missed the mark a little bit.
Sure.
Let's talk a little bit, and again, as I told you, these last two, we've got about 10 more minutes on this subject. We're going to kind of breeze through these a little bit quicker, but we're talking a bit about caption integrity at this point. Now, what do we mean by caption or sub-caption integrity, really, is that each, and Derek, this is going to go right to what you just asked, each sub-caption stands alone inside of the system. Now, I know individual marching can influence ensemble marching
Sure.
and vice versa, right? A group that marches well individually probably also has good ensemble marching. But we could see a group that has tough individual marching, but boy, are they hitting the dots. Or a group that has great individual marching, but the dots are super fuzzy for us.
The
Or
one that comes to mind, students look incredible trained, but yet they can't arrive at their sets at the right time. And that sometimes is a difference maker when I'm judging something. I see, okay, your ensemble score is not going to be as strong as Group B, where your technique is really good, but yet your visual phrase is as strong as your musical
Right.
phrase is, comes to mind.
And so we're thinking about, you know, each subcaption standing alone. So we're driving towards this bottom line. We have to be assessing both the what and the how, and that those spreads, even inside of the subcaptions. Now, I didn't do value of a 10th for subcaptions. That gets away. But realistically, if you hear Band A and their woodwinds are just outstanding, you want to recognize and reward that woodwind section. Whereas if the brass in Band A are not quite having the best day, they had a double tonguing passage, they kind of flubbed, there were a couple of ragged releases. You want to make sure you're talking about those performance issues. You also have to think about the content that's inside of that. And then Band B comes up, and they may be more consistent between their woodwind and their brass, but their woodwinds weren't as good as Band A's woodwinds, but their brass didn't have the issues that Band A's brass did, and so they kind of slide in that middle slot. And so I want to give you a graphic to think about it, right? So here's this is a visual one, but just for fun, let's say that Band 1 comes up, okay, and we're looking just inside of individual visual. Band 1 comes up, challenging drill, well done simultaneous responsibilities, some minor performance issues. So you go, all right, inside of individual, I'm going to put them at a 265. All right, Band 1, off the field, here comes Band 2. Standard drill. Nothing that really challenges the performers too much, but standard simultaneous responsibilities too, and a few performance issues today.
The benchmark kind of ensemble.
Yeah,
for the middle of the box.
they're in the middle of that box for you, right? Okay, and then here comes Band 3. Very easy drill. I mean, drill with no real high level of challenge whatsoever. It's all, really small step sizes. There's no choreographic content added to anything. The simultaneous responsibility, whenever they are having to do marching and playing, it's a struggle for them. Like the volumes are dropping out, and there are several performance issues. So we slot them into that, in that end of usually. And then here comes Band 4. They have very challenging drill. They're unimpeded. Anytime they have simultaneous responsibility, they're doing choreography and playing, like it doesn't change. When they're standing still and doing it, when they're on the move and doing it, when they're doing choreography with it, all of their music is incredibly well polished and performed, and really no performance issues over the day. When you're thinking about caption integrity, you could almost do this on your sheet as you were working. Now, I mean, you're talking about being incredibly specific, but you can think about slotting each one of those bands exactly where they are. I don't know, what reflections on that? I mean, because this scenario has come up for all of us.
It really has. When you hear the descriptions of what you're talking about, I'm looking at the neighborhoods and the spreads. As we talked about, there was the first group and then the fourth group, pretty similar in what the descriptors were of them, like who they are. And then as we described all the way from the third group, I guess the light green group, it was the terms you kept saying were, okay, you are 1 or 2, 3 fundamental issues away, and so it fit perfectly. Like, hey, these were areas that are concerns. Where the other one, it's nuances. It was like, well, your description of when a body is added, for instance, there's no excellence issues. It's still at the high level, and then that becomes a decision maker right there.
Right. Well, and so think about when we talk about your subcaption, if as a performer, like, or as a band participating, I could look at my subcaption and I could kind of know. And we're going to talk about Competition Suite, because Competition Suite does show some subcaptions.
Yes.
And so they are able to see from an individual marching perspective, we were here compared to this group and this group. We've not really had that layer of detail before on the written sheets. We would see the bottom line totals from each judge. But now with Competition Suite, we're going to be even more specific in that they're going to be able to see where you rank their woodwinds, where you scored them on a scale, out of 200 points, where the ensemble was out of 250, and see that with others. Which
not only does the commentary, the way it was described and how you said it, you could almost tell, here's the number we're going to probably get from this adjudicator. Now all of a sudden, I see all the subcaptions. I mean, of course, you can add them up. You can say, yeah, here's probably where we are in relationship to these other ensembles. And so I think it's a good validation tool. I wouldn't shy away from it, but I do think it really helps us.
Yeah. Lastly, and this is very much in the same vein, is a little bit of profiling. And so we need to take care to ensure that woodwind scores are independent from brass scores. And I think this is probably the one where we're all the most guilty. Obviously, the 2D ensemble plays, and we're going to evaluate that based on what we hear, and that's crediting both the woodwinds and the brass and the percussion. We're going to hear the woodwind feature moment, the brass feature moment, the percussion feature moment. Those are critically important to us as adjudicators, because we do have to draw out some level of numerical validity to what we're hearing inside of it. And so I thought I might pick an example. This is a fake recap, everyone. I used Mr. Munoz.
Calling him out right now.
Thank you, Joe, for letting me embarrass you here. You did a great job on this fake contest. If I'm looking at, so this is a fake area sheet in Competition Suite, and we can see ensemble, woodwind, brass, percussion, and the content scores. And you can see, for the most part, Joe had the first place group in first place. Every subcaption was in first, and the total was in first. He was across the board there. But look at that second place group. He profiled them a little bit. He said, your ensemble's in second place, which is where they ended up. But your woodwinds were in third, your brass were in fifth, your percussion was in seventh. So when the full ensemble played together, when we were hearing that interaction, all those things were second place. But when we started to kind of pull back the curtain and get into the weeds a little bit, we started to hear some variation that maybe gave us pause. And then, of course, he had the content in fourth. Take a look at that bottom group on his. He had them in third in ensemble. They ended up fourth in the contest. And again, remember, there's 2 other music judges and 2 visual judges, so there's a lot at play here.
Sure.
But his group, he actually had them in, this is a fake contest, don't worry, Mr. Munoz. He had them in third in ensemble, second woodwind, second brass, second percussion, second content. Right. So, again, as we make our way across, I want you to think about subcaption profiling and understanding that these scores are getting more and more microscopic as groups look at them, and understanding where they set against each other. Okay, now I had to pick a bad judge, so I gave it to me. I'm the bad judge.
Good call.
Today.
There you go.
And again, I didn't do anything wrong here that I feel terrible about, but I didn't profile the groups real well, because look, the first group is in first place across the board. The second group is almost in second place across the board. The third group, again, my third place group, they ended up fourth, as did Joe's. They were in third place almost universally across the board.
Right.
Did I really, again, and maybe that's the way it turned out, but did I really profile their woodwinds? And did I really listen? So again, when I see recaps like this, I wonder, did I dig as deep as I should have here in this fake contest to really isolate a number for women, or did I just kind of go, they're all around second place? Because look at my numbers even in the second place, 194, 194, 194.
Yeah.
I wasn't putting a lot of effort.
Looks a little suspect.
Yeah.
Especially if you have let's say it's a finals performance of 10 bands, you're going to have some variation. I doubt it's across the board.
Right.
All the way across those numbers.
And if there is, just to be honest, first place might be.
Yeah.
But it's rare. Okay, I got one more. Mr. Vaughn, you did a great job. So I used Randy Vaughn, and this is a fake contest. This never really happened. But again, you can see he did a great job of profiling these groups. And he even called it, look what he did with that fourth place group. Remember, a lot of us musically had that fourth place group pretty strong. And Mr. Vaughn said, no, they're not there. They're 7th and 6th for me. But if you look at his numbers, he went 2-1. Now, he does have a subcaption tie, and we'll talk about that here when we talk about Competition Suite. But you could see he went 2-1. He went 1-1. He had those close. They were close. And then he put a gap down to 3rd place, and then he put a pretty big, and this was a finals contest, he put a pretty big gap from 7th and 6th. So I just did a 10-band. I ran a fake contest when we were testing Competition Suite, and I thought, we can make an example of this for our judges and something to talk about. So to go back to this slide one more time, we did rating and ranking. We did impression analysis and comparison. And then we can circle back to things like using thirds. Numerical scale, right? Using thirds of the boxes, numerical scale, thinking about managing our numbers. We could talk about the value of a tenth and making sure that those numbers have value. I want to say one more thing about that I didn't say during value of a tenth and numerical scale. I'd like for our numbers as adjudicators in Texas to start to have meaning even year to year, so that we can go, well, the Brad Kent High School Band earned a 900. Our music scores were 890, 900, and 910 last year. Let's try and make it 910, 920, 930 this year. That, like, if we're really using these questions on the placemat, we're answering them with the descriptors, we're using scoring specific language, then I think we can absolutely begin to have numbers that year to year have meaning to these bands. And I think that's an incredibly strong statement going forward. We talked about subcaption integrity and subcaption profiling, meaning that we really are thinking very carefully inside of that to not just throw out blanket boilerplate numbers, but that we really are trying to give them a woodwind number and a brass number and a percussion number that's unique to that ensemble, that really kind of sets us up going forward. So some advanced tools that I'm hoping as we continue down this road with these sheets that your committee developed all those years ago, that we're really thinking about sharpening the saw and getting these to the highest levels.
Yeah, we all know there's a safety net with the ordinals for the most part, and it's great to have that, but it would be great to see it even evolve with what if we wanted to have the numbers there where the spreads meant something and actually point totals were actually a part of a state level competition. We'd love to have that. I have a question for you here. So let's say Group A comes out and they only, musically is what it comes to mind, they only present one, maybe 2 moments where I can evaluate the woodwinds. It's a woodwind feature and it's a flute soloist. Okay, so the rest of the time, it's ensemble all the time. In your opinion, so are you evaluating only the things that you can present to me? You obviously can't read more into it. Is it a limited number, or what's your take on that?
I think if I were to go back to that clip we showed earlier, where everybody was talking about the ensemble piece, my hope is that much like our concert bands, in our marching bands, we hear a woodwind contribution, we hear a brass contribution, we hear a well-balanced percussion contribution, and that inside of that ensemble moment, not only are we able to talk about the 2D moments, but we're also able to talk about what the woodwind so going down to that second box, what was the woodwind contribution when they were the focused element, but we know we wrote that for them to be successful. We wrote it for it to be perfect. We work it every day in class. We do those things. But that also inside of the ensemble performance, I can hear clarinet.
I
hear
their color,
saxophone. Because I think if we went to UIL, concert and sight reading, and we took our groups and we couldn't ever hear woodwinds, I don't even know that you'd make a 3. I think we'd probably make a 4 or a 5. Marching bands should be no different. Now, do there need to be moments that are dominated by a brass color or a percussion color, just as there should be a woodwind? Absolutely. The visual corollary of that is, are there moments where the color guard needs to be seen as a featured element? Are there also moments where they're going to be a supporting element behind that? I think that all of those things help us advance the cause of giving these groups the best feedback we can, because that's ultimately what we want. We were telling our new judges earlier, I want you to make it your aim. We all know as directors, we play certain recordings for kids. I'll embarrass Mr. Vaughn. Like Randy Vaughn has one that I played for my students, even like after we weren't doing that show anymore. It was just so good. It was so it targeted the thing. Well, yeah, it was positive where it needed to be, and it challenged us where it needed to be. And I thought he made a great call on that. I want you to make it your aim as a judge to be the one. Like, let's all be in competition with each other this year to be like, I want to be the one that Mark plays for his group.
Yeah.
You know, I want to be that judge going forward. And so with that, we're going to take our first full quiz of the day. Jerry, how do I access the quizzes? Let me put up the link for those of you who are fast. There are 3 ways you can access the quiz. Way number 1 is if you have another device in front of you, like say you're watching this on your computer screen, you can use your phone. It's 4 or 5 multiple choice questions. It's very easy. If you don't see your name on the list, don't worry. You just type it below. The very last choice is I don't see my name, and then you type it. So all good. If you find your name on the list, good. Go ahead and select it. Just makes my life easier. And you'll take that quiz. If you don't have the second device, no worries. If you look underneath the description for this video where it says UIL-TMAA Marching Band, there's a little link that says important links, and you can click on that blue document. The other thing I'm going to do for you here in just a moment is I'm going to go ahead and paste the link to quiz number 4 so that you can all take it. And we're going to pause here for just 2 minutes, and we're going to come back and talk with you a little bit about Competition Suite. So let's go ahead and pause for a second and let you take the quiz for just about 2 minutes. Thanks. All right, we're back. Oh, you can put up the slides if you want to. Ben's helping us today. So we're going to talk about Competition Suite. Competition Suite is an online digital judging program. I know Mark and I have used it for many years with DCI and Bands of America, but this is an easy way for you to do your adjudication. Now, we had a training with all of our area executives. This was about a couple weeks ago. I met with them and Dr. Kent, and we went through everything they need to know. You probably, if you're a band director who's at Competition Suite, you probably got an invitation from me, or you're going to get one this week if you haven't already set up your account, that invites you to set up your account, get your staff added and all that. But I want to tell you, and Mark and I both have a lot of experience with this app, what you need to be prepared for. First and foremost, what I'm going to say is the areas will provide you with all of the equipment. You don't need to bring anything. Now, I'm going to tell you what the areas are using because if you do want to bring your own, if you're just that kind of person about it, then I don't want to dissuade you from being able to do that. The area is going to present you, most of you, with an iPad to judge that day. And the iPad will be your primary means of adjudication. Some may use an Android tablet. Those work fine too. Believe it or not, your phone actually does a pretty good job. I wouldn't want to run the whole day on that, but you could. The other thing the area executives are going to present you with is a headset and a little kind of, I'll call it a dongle for lack of a better term, that has the ability to plug in and help you go right to the recording channel of that. Now, if you are somebody who is maybe a little germ conscious and you want to have your own headset, in the important links that I was just highlighting before, I put a link in there where you can order both of these off of Amazon. I think in total it's about $12.
It was very inexpensive.
Yeah, I know we both had to buy them for DCI this year. $12 or $14. But if you want to have your own, you can go buy your own and bring it with you, and it'll work on all those tablets. You don't have to. All the area executives are providing them. But again, if it's something you want to have. The other thing that the area executives are going to provide on that iPad that they hand to you or that Android tab is this app. If you want to have the app on your own device, that's fine too. I do have it on mine as just an emergency backup if everything comes crumbling down. It's a free app. I do want to note there are two Competition Suite apps. There's the one that the band directors use to hear their comments. It's called Competition Suite Commentary. And then it has a little, looks like a tape, I think, like a little tape on it. Yeah.
Cassette tape, yeah.
This one has a gavel on it. It says Competition Suite Judge.
Judge.
But they look real similar, just so you're forewarned. You can go download that for free. I've got, I think all of our judges are set up now. So if you go log in, based on the email that you've been receiving, the invitation to join us today, if you have that, chances are you also have this. So it's ready to go for you. So I just want to make sure that you know that that is there and ready to roll for you, and you can start playing with it and seeing how it all works. There is a login process. You can use your email and enter your password to get all logged in. Again, it's at the email address that I sent the invitation to join us today. So some of you, I have your school email. Some of you, I have your personal email. If I have both, you could try both. If you've not yet set up an account because you've never used Competition Suite before, which is certainly possible, you can create an account. You'll see on there where you do it, but use that same email. And once you go in, you'll see over there on that left-hand side, I happen to pull up, I have two profiles. I know that's bad. I shouldn't have this. This is one that I use for DCI and for the Colorado, when I judge in Colorado. And so you can see under judging, yours will have UIL under it. Now, if you're somebody like Mark who's got a group out there too, yours is going to have a group on it, and it might have a Bands of America logo and a UIL logo and a WGI logo. And you know, you can see these are some of my Capel ones.
NTCA, who has that one?
Yes, yeah. A lot of the local groups. So you're going to see TCGC, those kind of things. But look at the judging tab. And under that judging tab, which is the last one, it's going to say University Interscholastic League. If you don't see it, don't worry. I'm still working and cleaning it up, and we've got a month, so we're fine, a couple month and a half, so we're fine. But I did want you to know you can start logging into your profile and making sure that that works. If you need help, you can click on the help at Competition Suite. Matt Becker runs Competition Suite. He can help you. You can email me, and I can help you, but we can get you all logged in and set up. Even if your login doesn't work, you can still judge that day. The contest organizer, who's your area executive, they can log in and they can select you as a judge. So don't worry. If you're like, Jerry, I don't have time for this, I don't like technology, I don't want to mess with it, no big deal. You can show up that day and all of these things will be taken care of for you. But I wanted to walk you through the process just so you knew what to expect. And so once you have the tablet in front of you, what does it look like? Well, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to click on that app, and you're going to go into it and begin looking at the groups. Now, I want to say this very clearly because this is an important statement. If you are judging at an area that's using Competition Suite, you will not be writing on sheets. Boy, talk about, I mean, I almost want to ask that question when somebody calls me, Jerry, can you judge area? Are you using Competition Suite? Yeah, we are. Cool, I'm signing up because it takes a ton of pressure away. I mean,
Something to write.
Your recorded commentary is going to be everything. Now, that's not to say that you can't have sheets for the groups, that you can't print a sheet for every group if you ask for that, or you have just one general sheet you
like
use.
a laminated placemat sheet.
Right. Well, and I've asked the area execs to please have a laminated one or a card copy one for you that you can keep on your desk. But if you were to reach out to that area exec and say, hey, can I have one for every band? I'm sure they'd be open to give that to you. And I think that would probably help you tremendously. Now, when you go in, And this is at the login stage. It's going to show that contest. You see, that's that's that fake contest from before. That's the Area 6A ZZZ marching contest, and that's my fake contest that I've been using. And once I log in, I get to pick my judges. Oh, look, I guess I'll switch out some people, but there's Mr. Munoz, there's me, Dr. Kent judged that one, Joey Paul's on it, and Larry Matishak. So those were our 5 judges at our fake contest. I know I made some switches between then and then, but you'll select who you are. In my case, I select my name. At the very top, a little pop-up comes up, and it says, hey, Jerry, are we in prelims or we're in finals? Now, I will tell you this. After the prelims recap posts, you can't go back into prelims.
Right.
So, and honestly, if the prelims recap hasn't posted, it's going to default you into prelims. But I always check that anyway. It pops up right there when you go in, and you see that little orange circle at the top. You can click on it to activate that bar. And you can see there's a list of groups. I'm actually midway judging here on this fake profile. I have Lake Travis and Cedar Ridge and Pearland and Cy Woods and Marcus and Carroll Senior. I'm all over the map here. But this is the strangest area anywhere, right?
Yeah, that's where it's spread out.
And I have some bands already scored and some not. But you can see there I have an ensemble performance number of 200 for the group I've selected. I have a woodwind performance of 150, etc. I've already got some numbers plugged into there. When I open it the first time, though, it's going to kind of look like this. It's going to be a lot of zeros down the column. And you can see that after selecting the contest, I'm going to click on that first group. In this case, Westwood's my first group of the day. So I click on Westwood, and it's going to launch me into this. Now, you notice on the right-hand side, there are 2 things. There's one thing that says score and one thing that says record. Well, obviously, I can't score them before I record for them. So I'm going to click on that record function next, and it's going to pop up a screen that looks like this, and it says record commentary. I love that Matt put this note on here. He writes, you can tap pause if needed, right? Because isn't that the question we always have when we get
Can I hit this button?
handheld and you're like, if I press pause, am I going to be okay?
Yeah.
In competition suite, yes. Good afternoon, drum majors. This is Jerry. Or good afternoon, pleasure band. This is Jerry Miller. I'm here to judge. Well, I'll be back with you after the drum major salute. Pause, and then I wait, drink my water, review my sheet, what have you, and then the announcer goes. The clock, the 5-minute clock, gets down to 0. We switch to the 8-minute clock, and then I can unpause it.
And you can see that 10 seconds have elapsed on your intro. Okay, it's working. I did the right version. It's on there. Yeah.
And some people say, well, but Jerry, how do I know that I'm recording? Well, there's a few. I think Matt did a good job with this. Number one, you see that the first circle I have in the center there. It says recording and it has an orange circle. Okay, I like that. Number 2, the time's moving. I like that. Number 3, do you see the little VU meter over on the right side? I like that. I can see the VU meter bouncing as I talk. So I feel really sure that I'm recording now. It's a triplicate. I mean, really, the recording light is on, that orange light. The time is moving. The VU meter's bouncing. So I know I'm recording. I can press pause. Even if the tablet goes to sleep, it keeps recording. Because some tablets, if you don't touch it for 2 minutes or what have you, the screen goes black. Yeah. No worries. No worries. The tablet is still recording. You are all good. You'll go back into it, swipe or what have you, touch the button, home button to get back in. Now, when you are all done, you're going to press the stop button. Do you see it over there on the left? It's in gray. And once you press the stop button, you're going to get this little green microphone with a check, and it says all set, meaning you're done, you're good. That file is going to that director, okay? What happens if I press stop too early? What happens if, I meant to press pause,
Right.
all right? Pause is over on the right. You see pause on the right. I press stop instead. My fingers slipped, right? If I press stop instead, it does not let me go back in. Well, I shouldn't say that. You could go back in and re-record, but it will overwrite anything you did.
Oh, no. Yeah.
So let's say that I do say, good afternoon, so-and-so high school. This is Jerry Miller. I'll be judging music today. I'm on the 35-yard line. Excited to see you. Stop. Shoot. Guess what I have to do? I have to go record my intro again.
Right.
Record. So chances are you're only going to do it once. Now, my bigger fear would be, what if you press stop in the middle of a show? But again, we wouldn't press pause or stop in the middle of a show anyway.
Right.
So just know, if you accidentally press stop, you see that record button's back in orange again. If you hit it, it's going to say, recording will overwrite all commentary, and you just go, yep, and I got to do my intro again.
Yeah.
It's okay. I mean, it happens to the best of us. I'm sure it's happened in my judging career. Like, not the end of the world. The group will
Right.
totally understand.
And so each group is going to only get one file. You can't create 2 files for them.
No way.
It's just one, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, just one file per group. And I'll tell you, we use this at 5A, 6A state. We piloted it last year between 7 judges, right? Prelims and finals, all of 5A and 6A, we had one recording go away. Every other recording worked perfectly.
great.
Which compared to the little handhelds is a much higher
It really
rate
is.
of success.
Yes. It's a victory.
Yeah, so once you're done with the record tab, now you're going to click on the score tab. You see the little thumbs up. Inside of there, you're going to click a score for each one of the groups. When you click in it, it launches up into a little, almost like a little calculator almost. What happens if I type a number that's too high?
Out of range.
It kicks me out, yeah. Kicks you out. What happens if I type a number and I try to use a decimal? It's going to kick you out. Like, you have to be accurate with this. But it will give you very clearly the ability to enter that number. What happens if I type a number that's tied with another band? The number will change to red. Okay? Now, you can, and Brad, Kent, and I have discussed this, you can have a subcaption time, meaning you could have the Band A and Band B woodwinds both at 180. I personally don't love that. I would like for you to make a call. I would like for you to go, if they are really that close, go 182 and 180. Like, I mean, if they're legitimately that close, just make a call, okay? But if you do end up with one, end of the day, oh, that second band and the last band of the day, gosh, it's so fine. It will be okay. But you cannot have a bottom line tie.
Right.
If that top number is in red, then you can guarantee that an executive secretary is going to be tapping your shoulder in a few minutes, right? Now, what about this green verify button? This green verify button is like, imagine if you wrote the score in pencil the first time. The green verify button puts it in pen. It locks the score. Now, does that mean I can't change it ever again? No, it's fine if you need to go back and visit it. What Dr. Kent and I have talked about is we would like you to lock scores at the end of a block if you feel comfortable. Okay, so at the end of the first block of bands, let's say there's 8 bands in a block, seems reasonable. 8 bands in the first block, go ahead and lock those, and you'll just hit that green verify button. Now, I'm going to show you a shortcut as to how to do that, but you can hit that green verify button, and that will lock all of those numbers for those first block of bands for you.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I'm a band that's competing. I can hear your recording then, but I'm not seeing any numbers right now. Even though it's verified, I only get the audio portion of it like we always would, but verified doesn't mean, oh no, and they changed their number, they dropped us down some. I never see that.
No. The scores don't get released until we go through the verification period at UIL. And I'll talk to you about that here in just a second and show you what that looks like. So as far as that goes, you can click on, and I love at the bottom of the column, I think I showed it in this previous slide. Do you see that down there at the bottom? It says worksheet and summary down there at the bottom. I'm kind of floating my mouse down there. I can click on that worksheet and look at what it gives me. There's Round Rock. I have a tie. You can see that. There's Round Rock and Reagan, and I have ensemble, woodwind, brass, percussion, and content, and it shows that I have a tie between those two groups, right? So I can go into that worksheet, and then I can go back to that score and begin cleaning that up for myself if I'd like, right?
Any time I can go to the Access Work.
Absolutely. So, you know, as Mark was saying, when you go to lunch, if you're like, man, I got to clean this up, this is kind of messy, this is an opportunity for you to dive back in and work on that. But you can see once you've verified, you have to ask that tabulator or that area executive, hey, can you unlock that for me? I got to go back and revisit my score for Band A, right? And I'd have to go back and see that again. You can also use the summary screen. It looks very similar. What I like about the summary screen, and I think of summary as in I'm done, right? I mean, so the word summary makes me think I'm finished. You can go into that summary screen and click verify all, and it'll right down the line for you. So if you're looking for a faster way to do that, because you saw before, you could literally verify every number for every, I mean, you could get that microscopic. You can go over here to summary, and you can just go, I'm going to verify the first 5 bands of the day, 6 bands with that first block. I'm going to click Round Rock, Reagan, there's Keller. We'll go through and just click those guys and get them locked in. So that's, again, another way that you can tackle that. Now, I do want to talk to you about the recaps. The recaps are going to be a lot more focused. Now, the recap, and Mark was talking about, do the bands get their score when I verify? No, they will get their recordings. You know, some areas we're getting them their recordings faster than others. But now, once you press that stop button, the file is going to upload from your tablet up to the cloud, right? Once it's in the cloud, the directors get a notice on their phone that says a new file is available for Band A. and then they can click on it and they can listen to your commentary. But they will not see your scores. The only way they can see your scores is when that area executive has finished and verified every score of the whole contest. At the very end, they're going to do what's called release the scores. And I've talked with our area executives. Many of them are going to do it after the verification period. So you're going to come in the room, and we're going to say one recap per band. Here's yours, here's yours, here's yours. Everybody look at it. Let me know if you have any questions. You can release just your individual band's numbers and all the math. But the good news is this system cleans up a lot of the math and a lot of the errors that can come out of Competition Suite going forward. Okay? So do you have any questions for me about Competition Suite? I'm going to look in the chat. It's been pretty quiet so far, so I like that a lot. Hopefully I'm doing okay by all of you. We're going to take a quiz on Competition Suite. Were you paying attention? I hope you were. I hope you're engaged.
Watching the score of your favorite football game right now.
Right. I think the Texans are playing right now. So the Cowboys are off, so we're good. So let's go ahead and bring up quiz number 5. This is our final quiz. We're going to take a few questions, but I've got a couple other things I want to cover with you. But let's pause here for a second and just let you take quiz number 5. We're going to pause for 2 minutes, and then I'll be back with you with a couple of exemplars and some closing remarks. All right. Coming back in, I hope you were able to answer quiz number 5. Again, you can go over there to the important links, and there's no pressure from us to get all those answered. If you need a little more time, you can absolutely do that and take more time with that. So the other thing Mark and I wanted to share with you today were some exemplars. One of the things that we've been really excited about through this process and this partnership between TMAA and UIL is that with the permission of the directors and some judges, we've begun to craft, and again, we only have Competition Suite from 5A, 6A, but we've begun to craft some exemplars. Now, I leaned heavy on 5A this year. It's a non-advancing year for them to keep it fairly non-competitive, so to speak. We used some 5A programs that performed at state. And to let you hear a little bit of judge commentary, I think that there's something interesting when you get a group that is not your own, where there's not an emotional connection, where when the judge talks about alignment, you like say the kid's name in your mind that was out of the line because you know.
It's the flutes.
Yeah, right. Like you kind of have maybe a calmer sense of where we are with that. And so I thought it might be fun just to like listen to a couple of exemplars and think about music. And so this first exemplar is going to be Julie Davila. She's talking to Wakeland High School, and I want to thank Tanner Smith for letting us use this recording. This is state prelims, and she was on the music panel. And I want you to listen to a little bit of her pace, her use of silence, the ability to take in a moment, listen to it, and this is the very tail end of their show. So you're going to also hear Julie's wrap-up of just kind of where she thinks things are and what comments she says, positively and areas for additional growth. Anything else before we hear this?
No, I mean, you one thing, you'll recognize that she is appreciating the efforts and the training that have gone into this and the content choices that have been made. Like, she's recognizing that and then also alluding to what degree they're executing it.
Absolutely. So, Ben, let's go ahead and roll. This is the clip of music and an exemplar here with Julie Davila.
synthesized sounds to boost that moment, along with percussion. With the staging of the percussion backfield, I felt like they were a little understated in that. Wow, velocity on the field handling. Really strong moment for you, Wakeland, with the physical demands. Beautiful low brass. All right, bring it. Woo! Yeah. Excellent with that field coverage. A really excellent sense of balance and blend, energy that all the members were giving. Particularly challenging physicality of that last 30 seconds as well. All right, Wakeland, really enjoyed it. What an impressive program, top to bottom. Yeah, I certainly appreciate all the challenges environmentally, physically in the program. You know, one comment just moving forward is just trying to dial in that the 2D moments so that, you know, I think it's just a minor balance issue right now of just making sure we hear full choir of woodwinds through the middle voices to the upper brass in some of those 2D moments. I think the synthesizer perhaps might have been contributing to a little bit of dominating over the woodwinds at times, and I'm sure in a second performance you'll be able to dial in some of those balances. Really enjoyed it. I hope my comments have been helpful. I want to wish you the best of luck.
Super. Like, I think Julie does a great job of making a call for a group in prelims that offers some real reward. She's a fan, and I know you had sent me a note about that. Like, one of the things we wanted to make sure we mentioned today is, you know, we want you to be fans of the groups you judge.
I bet she did that for every group, just giving them, I'm giving you my best, I'm recognizing your best, and celebrating what you're doing, and also analyzing and being critical when needed. And I mean, what a great analysis of, like, yeah, she's on our side here. She likes us.
Yeah, I mean, I think you walk out of that as a band director and you go, I want to play this for my students. If my principal said, hey, what are those guys saying up there? What are those ladies talking about? I'd be like, hold on, I got you. I'll share this file with you on Competition Suite and let you listen to what they're talking about. So, you know, I think all of those are incredibly valuable. I also want you to notice her pauses where, you know, we understand that you can't talk and listen at the same time. Anybody who's been in a long-term relationship knows you can't talk and listen at the same time. Like,
I'm guilty right here. Yeah.
You know, you have to take it in. And I don't think as a director I fault you as an adjudicator if you're not talking for the straight 7 or 8 minutes, but that you're taking a moment to experience that and be there with those kids. Be their band director for 15 minutes and offer them commentary to help them grow as an ensemble, whether area prelims or area finals are their last performances of the year, or whether they're going on to San Antonio. You know, offering them that and being on their side and being their fan, I think is so valuable.
Hard to hear because it was a snapshot of the end of the show. Let's say that it was the same tenor as well as the same level of commentary. Probably going to score the Wakeland band very well at that contest.
Right.
Most likely.
And that's
tell it was leading us to a certain number.
Yeah, I should have looked that up. I'd be curious to see on our 3 exemplars, you know, where did the numbers fall for? I suppose anybody could go to a recap right now and look that up. It's online. But just kind of see where those fall. So we're producing right now a set of primarily audio only. We're going to get the video component added in more and more. But as you go to judge area, I'm hoping that today I can tease the idea of listen to a couple of exemplars in the car on the way to the stadium, or if you're, you know, flying or driving down the night before, take a moment and listen to a few exemplars and be like, these are good. Now, most of my exemplars are from state, so the sheets are not an exact match. But I think you can still get an idea, as Mark said, of the tenor of the level of engagement and excitement that we want to offer to the group. So let's jump over to music, to visual. So we're going to hear Jackie Gilly this time. She's going to talk to Aledo High School. This is right at the end of their intro, getting into the opener. And Jackie's going to, you know, sometimes I think we're a little hesitant as band folks to maybe make the color guard level of commentary that we might want to. And Jackie, who has an extensive background in band and in color guard, doesn't dive too deep. She uses very plain terms that I think any of us could pull out of the hat without too much trouble. And I think Jackie's discussion of what's asked of the performers, how well they do it, is really, really solid in this exemplar. Anything else before we hear this clip?
Yeah, another great example here. Let's view it.
So, yeah, Ben, let's go ahead and cue up. This is Aledo, and again, thanks to Joey Paul for letting us use this clip, and this is Jackie Gilly judging visual.
Excellent use of the gesture learned by the color guard. Excellent job as we bring the full ensemble together. Excellent understanding of the shaping of that arm. And what a great job of staging the color guard around the band. Handling the responsibility so well with use of the body underneath the equipment. Same thing with the band, the visuals with the lower body. Thank you for the simultaneous responsibility here. Yes. Excellent job of visual musicality from the color guard. It just seems to stop one count earlier than that drum roll up. Excellent with the visuals we come across. Strong uniformity, including with the horn visual. Thank you.
So, again, in listening to Jackie, I like that it's very plain language. Any high school student, even a high school administrator who maybe doesn't know a lot about visual could listen to that and go, I totally understand. I think we get that question as directors over the years. What are those judges looking for? What are they listening to? And I think that, again, a sense of appreciation that Jackie shows inside of that moment, a sense of she is with the performers. She understands what's being asked of them. She's not making a huge deal of it. She's like, this is what's being asked of you, and this is how well it's very consistent, or it's, and I think she's making those remarks to obviously a very strong ensemble.
It harkens back to the earlier discussion about impression analysis, et cetera. It's the opening of the show. She's getting a strong impression of what's happening, but she is going to a little bit of analysis mode. She is like, okay, why is this happening? This is good. Where are we on this? Are we at a really high level? This is really neat how this is evolving. She's really starting to study it in addition to being introduced to it already. But what a great example.
Yeah, and so we're going to play one more. Before we do that, I do want to highlight back on that important links document and how valuable I think that could be to you, because I've put a number of resources, and if you'll give me a second here, I may be able to bring it up and show it to you. But one of the things that we wanted to be able to share with you as best we could were some resources that you can take down the line. And I know Mark highlighted this earlier. You can absolutely come back and revisit this presentation at any time. Any of the things we talked about today are things that you can absolutely look at. But when we think about that important links document, sorry, I'm not going to be able to show it on the screen to you, but I can call it up over here. But one of the things that is really cool inside of that is not only did we want to provide you with the quizzes and links to that to make today flow better, but we also threw in there that scoring specific terminology. Remember that that's just a list of synonyms, because after 32 bands, consistently is a word that kind of wears me out too.
Redundancy,
It gave you some notes there. There's notes on guard commentary. I like to read that, especially at area if I'm doing music and prelims and visual and finals. During that dinner break or what have you, I might just go back and just read through that and just be like, okay, I'm going to make sure I give not just, I think you said this earlier, not just that's a pretty flag, but that you're talking to the performer.
Yeah. How are they doing it, not what you purchased and put on the field.
Right. There's copies of the region and area and state adjudication sheets if you want to have blanks of those and have those available. Additionally, I put the advancement process. I know most of you know that, but just to have it at handy. All those scoring tools and those tote sheets we were talking about during numbers management, there are the multicolored ones, there are black and white ones, and there's even a digital scoring tote resource that does it all. If you're a technology kind of person like I am, you might like that, and you can actually type in your scores, and it'll auto-track, auto-rank them for you over the course of the day. You can download it as an Excel file. I would probably do that rather than relying on Google to work in whatever press box you're in. I did put the competition suite equipment, and then the area and state judge manuals are in there. The thing that I'm looking forward to adding to that are going to be some exemplars that we can share, just some audio files of that you can continue to listen to and grow with. So one more to share with you. This is going to be Dr. Nola Jones, and we're talking about content. She's working with, she's listening to, at this point, McCallum High School out of Austin, and talking about their ballad. I think sometimes when it comes to content, we maybe feel like, is that a little more subjective? Is that, how do I get into that content box? But I think the questions are our guide. Are all the and you're going to hear her address these things. Are the performers being utilized? Is there clear, and I know she addresses this pretty quickly, visual reinforcement of what she's hearing? How about, is the musical content suitable for them? And she talks a little bit about excellence inside of this clip. I don't know, anything else before we share this one?
Especially hitting that about the visual coordination of that when it was a content design sheet, but she does allude to where you are allowed to talk into the visual caption and vice versa.
Absolutely. So, Ben, let's go ahead and roll this last clip for everyone. This is an example of content. And again, in the case of State, it's a little bit more overarching, so you're going to hear her bounce around a little bit, but gives you a sense of kind of what that commentary and that what and how flow should be like. Let's go ahead and roll that.
Lower body information softens this musical statement over on stage left. Yeah, and the restage for the woodwind was actually motivated by the way the saxophone solo evolved there. Technically, that was cool. Woodwinds, you have to sing. You're staged back there by the mirrors, and I think that's a really great staging opportunity for you. Lovely moment there between the metals and the woodwinds. What great coordination there. Yeah! Yeah, great moment in the altissimo register and how you turned everything backstage to make that happen.
All right, and we're back. So, did you learn anything from those exemplars today? I'm really hoping that you did. I'm hoping you feel like, from the exemplar perspective, there's additional opportunity for all of us to grow. And so, my hope, and I don't mean to put any of you on the spot or make you feel anxious, is that next year, as a lot of the areas move to competition suite, I can use your exemplars. So I leaned a lot on the state ones, and I leaned on 5A as it's a non-advancing year. I would love to be able to pull exemplars from all over the state, from 2A through 6A area rounds, from groups that are state finalists to groups that, missed area finals. I mean, really just show that full range. And I think the one through line for me of all three of these exemplar clips is how these ladies are all big fans of the groups they're seeing. I feel like they view it as if they were asked to come in and clinic and said, give us your best 15 minutes. And I feel like they get that.
And knowing those three ladies, they all, the group that's in the middle of the pack, they give them that same energy level. They give them the same information and also the same educational experience along the way. They're just true consummate educators.
Yeah. So with that, we are well ahead of schedule, as I thought we might be, separating out the newer judges from those returning folks. So what do your next steps look like? So a couple of things. I think it would be smart for you to look through the totes and decide which tote you want to use. I saw one person ask, do I need to bring it with me? Most area execs provide you with one, but especially if you like the digital resources, you can start playing with that. So I would have a tote idea in mind. If you wanted to order the microphone and the dongle, you could. Again, they're going to have them for you, but I totally understand if you want to have your own, especially because your mouth is so close to it, not wanting to share it with others. I completely get that. I might make a note, and I'm going to start sharing some exemplars with you. Gosh, I'm hoping by the end of this week. I've got some time carved out in my calendar. They're going to be audio only, but I want to be able to share 3 or 4 good music ones, 3 or 4 good visual ones to get you kind of going forward. Review the color guard sheets. Review any of the general overall sheets, look at that scoring specific bloom, and practice. Now, how do you mean practice, Jerry? Well, many of you are in front of a band right now. Maybe it's the same band every day because they're your group. Maybe you're retired and you're doing clinics and you're going in front of groups. I promise, if you're doing a clinic with a group and you're out there with them and it's the end of the night and they're going to do a run through at the end, if you said, hey guys, rather than just watch this, I'd like to make a file and I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
That's incredibly
They would
helpful.
love that, yeah.
Yes. I mean, again, for me as a band director, I want that. That judge, though, is also growing, right? I'm growing as an adjudicator in that process as well. So think about how you can do that. And even if you're not in front of a lot of groups, that's okay. YouTube is a wonderful resource. Now, please don't go look up groups you're going to judge this year. That's not okay. Okay, but I do want you to feel comfortable that you can go onto YouTube and play with that a little bit and watch some shows from previous years of groups you're not going to see at area, and look at that and feel really confident
I'm sure
about
there's
it.
many halftime performances of,
Yeah.
especially works in progress. That's another great opportunity to be able to say, hey, I know this is incomplete, but let's talk about it now, because you'll be a different type of judging. So.
Yeah, so don't be shy about getting your feet wet and diving in. But again, I want to thank you so much for today. I don't see any other questions in the chat. We are going to take your questions over email. If you have any others, just email me at the one that you received the invitation to. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Sunday, a great week of school, a great marching season, and we'll see you all again very soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.